Chapter 757. At this moment, in the dark underground palace, they had left the Hall of the Gods graveyard and left the tombs full of tombs. They were deep into the underground palace, surrounded by rock walls and ancient paths paved with blue stones. Fairy little Xing, where is the exit? Chu Yingxian's face was filled with distress. Her jade-like hands grabbed onto Yun Nuoxing's sleeves as he dragged her forward step by step. Her face was a bit tired. They had already been deep in the underground palace for nearly 3 days, but they still hadn't found the exit. This underground palace had been built into an underground maze. There were tunnels that extended in all directions, and there were even some walls that could be pushed open. Behind these walls was another tunnel. I don't know. Yun Nuoxing shook her head and sighed. Unless we took the wrong path from the beginning, we should be able to get out. It's just a matter of time. Chu Yingxian frowned when she heard that. She was about to say something, but Yun Nuoxing sighed and said, "Don't complain. I'm tired too. We can't replenish energy in the tomb. If it weren't for the fact that we have a strong foundation, we would have been drained. If you can't walk, do you want me to carry you?" Yun Nuoxing sighed. She sounded tired. Xian's little face was also slightly gloomy. She didn't have much energy to speak. The energy in the underground maze was thirsty. They didn't know if it was because there was too little energy or something else, but in this underground palace, their strength was slowly decreasing. It might not be a problem for a while, but if it dragged on, they probably wouldn't be able to bear it. "Who wants you to carry me?" Chu Yingxian muttered. She sighed and said, "The underground palace is constantly draining our strength. If we can't get out in half a month, I will definitely become a dried corpse and become one of those skeletons. I don't want to be like that. Save some strength to walk." Yun Nuoxing looked at him speechlessly. She used a little strength to support Xian and said, "Don't be too pessimistic. Since people can come in, they can definitely get out. Before we entered the maze, we saw some skeletons. When they fell, they were facing the direction of the hall. Maybe they walked in from outside the maze. I'm looking forward to seeing what Yang Qian and the others are doing. That way, I could determine the location. Even if we destroy this place, we can still get out." Yun Nuoxing looked up and said, "But we don't know how deep this place is. It will be fun if it doesn't penetrate the ground." Yishi looked at him and couldn't help but say, "The walls here are very hard. Even I can't do any damage. So, we only have one chance." Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing looked down at her and smiled gently. This smile also made Yi understand. Yun Nuoxing's all-out attack might be able to destroy the underground palace, but if he couldn't create an exit, although they wouldn't be buried underground, Yun Nuoxing, who couldn't replenish his strength, would definitely be unconscious. "Then I will pray a little and see if those guys can find an exit," Chu Yingxian mumbled. Yun Nuoxing smiled and didn't say anything. He was also praying, but the possibility of that happening wasn't very high. They walked for a long time in the underground maze. Yun Nuoxing suddenly stopped, causing Chu Yingxian, who was walking almost unconsciously, to bump into him. Her small nose was pressed against his back. Chu Yingxian came back to her senses and took a step back. She rubbed her small nose and stared at Yun Nuoxing unhappily. "What are you doing?" "There's wind," Yun Nuoxing replied casually. He walked to the wall and touched it with his palm. Then, he knocked on the wall and said, "There's wind, there's an echo. This place is hollow. Xiaoxi, come and help me." Yun Nuoxing called out to Yishi, then looked at the wall and said, "This underground maze is full of traces of man-made modification. Although this is already a relic from the Dark Age, it doesn't mean that there's nothing left. This might be a secret passage that leads to the exit." Yishi glanced at him, then nodded. She shouted softly and used all her strength to push the 3-meter-long stone wall to the side. Xian and the others were slightly happy when they saw that the wall was pushed open. However, they were stunned when they looked inside. "Are you sure this doesn't lead to the underworld?" Chu Yingxian said quietly. Behind the cliff, an ancient passageway appeared. The walls were inlaid with a few eternal pearls, illuminating the passageway and allowing them to see the passageway clearly. For example, the sharp swords hanging above their heads, the huge spikes on the cliff, and the rows of sharp blades on the ground made this place look extremely terrifying. Yin Nuoxing glanced at her guiltily, then picked up a stone and threw it 6 or 7 meters away. It landed on the ground with a bang. Whoosh! Pooh! 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 Bang! As the stone fell, the passage in front of them was suddenly filled with arrows that turned into a rain of swords and flew everywhere. These arrows hit the wall and actually bounced to the side. The spikes hanging from the ceiling suddenly fell like rain. Even the wall was pierced, and arrows as thick as an arm shot out. They nailed the wall on the opposite side and shot out dense cracks. Looking at the passage that had suddenly become like a battlefield, the few of them fell silent. Yin Nuoxing's pretty face was also slightly pale. At this time, they were already a little weak. Moreover, these mechanisms were obviously not ordinary mechanisms. They were strange mechanisms that were used to target gods and even gods. If they were hit, the consequences would be unimaginable. It's the blade-breaking arrow. The power of these arrows depends on the cultivation level of the person who made them. If it was made by a divine underworld expert, it would have a strong killing power against divine underworld experts. Similarly, the blade-breaking arrow made by a divine underworld expert would have the power to kill divine underworld experts. Yishi walked forward and picked up an arrow. She glanced at it and then said to Yin Nuoxing with lingering fear. However, the craftsmanship of blade-breaking arrows is very complicated. If it could be mass-produced, almost anyone would be able to kill a godly Emperor Master. Yishi said and slowly put away the blade-breaking arrows on the ground. These are made by gods and were also a means to fight against enemies. Yin Nuoxing fell silent for a while, then suddenly laughed and said, "Look, the craftsmanship of the Dark Age is still not bad. After so many years, these mechanisms are still working. The owner of this maze is also quite diligent." After saying that, he also laughed dryly. Chu Yingzhan, Zian, and the others did not look at him. They just stared at him quietly with Mei Mao. Their stares made his hair stand on end. He quickly picked up another stone and threw it in front of the passage. However, this time, there was no movement when the stone fell to the ground. Chu Yingzhan thought that they could leave, so she wanted to take a step forward. However, Yin Nuoxing grabbed her arm. She was just about to ask what was wrong when Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes at her. She picked up another stone and threw it in the same direction. Pooh! 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 Dang! When the third stone fell, a blazing blue flame suddenly spewed out of the tunnel. Then, a blade that was emitting a cold light and spanned across the entire tunnel fell from the sky, cleaving a smooth crack in the tunnel. Is this really not the way to the underworld? Even Yishi could not remain calm and could not help but ask. I don't know. Don't ask me. I only know that there should be no problem this time. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. As if to prove that there was really nothing wrong, he took the lead and walked forward. Zian and the others were relieved. Even though the spikes that protruded from the rock wall looked terrifying, they felt that as long as they followed Yin Nuoxing, they would not be safe. Chu Yingzhan, on the other hand, hesitated for a while and muttered. She looked at Yin Nuoxing's back and followed him. She did not dare to stay here alone at this time. They crossed the mechanisms without any danger and walked for a long time in the passage. Then, a huge stone room appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing and the others, startling them. There was nothing in the huge stone chamber. There was only a huge magic formation carved on the ground. This magic formation was different from the magic formation that Yin Nuo knew. The lines in the magic formation passed through the two energy matrix lines that circled the canvas and extended to the outside. This is an alchemy array from the Dark Age. Yin Nuoxing and Yishi exclaimed at the same time when they saw the huge array carved on the ground. Alchemy arrays can be used depending on the array. This one in front of us. Let me take a look. Yin Nuoxing explained softly to Zian and the others. Then he sized up the alchemy array seriously. Before he could see through it completely, Yishi spoke first. This alchemy array can create weapons out of thin air. Although the quality will not be top-notch, and it cannot be preserved forever, it can create endless divine weapons. Looking at its grade, the weapons created will probably be comparable to level 9 divine weapons. To be more specific, they should be level 9 divine weapons. It's a pity that it can't really go against level 9 divine weapons. Otherwise, this alchemy array would be heaven defying. Yin Nuashing sighed. He was also a little whimsical. If this alchemy array could really create divine weapons that were comparable to level 9 divine weapons, then forging skills would be meaningless. However, even though it couldn't go head-to-head with a divine level 9 divine artifact, it wouldn't be a problem to go head-to-head with a divine level 8 divine artifact. Moreover, its greatest value should be its ability to be mass-produced. Even though it couldn't be stored for too long, it wouldn't be a problem for it to last for a battle. If it was used in an army, it would be equivalent to equipping an army with an unlimited number of divine level 9 divine artifacts. Yin Nuashing and Yi Shi looked at each other, then released their soul power without saying a word. No matter what, they had to remember it first. This was the civilization's heritage from the Dark Age, something that did not exist in this era. Seeing their actions, Feng Er and the others also knew what they were doing. They looked at the three women and spread out in this stone room. Most of their gazes were focused on the side of the stone room. There was a flight of stairs that led to the top, but the top of the stairs was blocked by some gravel. If there was no accident, that should be the exit. Phew! This is the exit, right? I want to rest for a while. Chu Yingjian wiped the sweat off her pretty face. They had been walking around for the past few days, and they could not recover their strength in the maze, so they had suffered a little. After about 4 or 5 minutes, Yin Nuashing and Yi Shi opened their eyes. They did not immediately comprehend it, but just engraved it. After all, alchemy arrays and ordinary arrays were somewhat different, and they could only know how to operate after studying it. After engraving this alchemy array, the two stood up and looked at the stairs. Then, Yin Nuashing smiled at Xian and the others. "Let's go, I hope this is the exit." Yi Shi rolled her eyes at him. Could he not say such frightening things at this time? However, she did not delay. Her small white hands shrank into her wide sleeves, and she smashed the huge rock in front of her into pieces. Suddenly, a dazzling silver blue light shone in. This light was like the sun being seen through the clouds. It was so dazzling that the few of them found it very dazzling. Along with the light, a majestic power surged in, making them all breathe a sigh of relief. After their eyes adjusted to the light, Yin Nuashing and the others stepped on the stairs. After coming out of the stairs, they arrived in front of a dilapidated ruin. The silver blue spatial crack was still flowing in the sky. Phew, we're out. Seeing the silver blue flowing space, Yin Nuashing also breathed a sigh of relief. These 3 days in the underground maze had made him dizzy. "Oh, why are you all here?" Yin Nuashing and the others had just come out of the underground when they heard a somewhat familiar startled voice. They froze for a moment and turned their heads. Then they saw that not far away, Yang Qian and the others were staring at them in a daze. Chapter 758. Our group either died or scattered. It wasn't easy for us to find this ancient city. We came in to explore it, but we couldn't leave. Although this city is very big, more than 80% of it is in ruins. Only the skyward monument in front of us is relatively intact, but we can't understand a single word on it. Yang Qian sighed helplessly and briefly explained the situation to Yin Nuashing. Yin Nuashing seemed to understand something. The tomb they came out of was under the city. They had walked for several days without encountering any spatial distortion. It was likely that the entire city and the tomb below were protected by a force, preventing them from being affected by spatial rifts. The Skyward Monument records the major events that happened in this city. Unfortunately, the words on it are very ancient. They should be words from the Dark Age, said Yang Qian as he pointed at the stone monument not far away. Let me take a look. Yin Nuashing's interest was piqued when he heard that. He walked towards the Skyward Monument. It was a 30-foot-long stone monument that was only a meter tall and wide. It was placed in the middle of the ancient city ruins. The ancient words reflected a faint light under the silver-blue space. The blood-red words seemed to be written with cinnabar. Upon seeing the blood-red words, Yin Nuashing frowned slightly. He extended his finger and gently stroked it. His fingertip was dyed red. He sniffed his fingertip and his expression changed slightly. This is blood. Everyone's expression changed slightly as well. They heard Yin Nuashing continue. To be able to flow from the Dark Age without drying up, this is the divine blood of a deity. Yin Nuashing looked at the gaps between the blood-red words and reached out to wipe away the dust. What was revealed were blurry words. The deity who wrote this wanted to leave something behind to inform future generations. He covered up the original contents of the Skyward Monument and used the indestructible divine blood to leave behind eternal words. This should be a very important matter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have covered up the entire Skyward Monument contents and only left behind the blood words. Yin Nuashing walked forward slowly and reached the front of the Skyward Monument. However, he was still a little distressed when he saw the words. These were not words from the mythological era. He could not understand them. Furthermore, Ziyi could not understand them either. In other words, these were words from the true Dark Era. The eternal divine blood has lost its divine power. Although it can affect us, we can't read it with our divine sense. This is the authentic language of the Dark Age. Yin Nuashing turned to look at the crowd and shook his head with a sigh. He was also helpless in this situation. Yin Nuashing turned his head around, only to see Chu Yingzhan's beautiful eyes filled with anticipation as she looked at him. That expression of anticipation caused her eyes to sparkle incomparably, causing Yin Nuashing to be stunned. What was wrong with this girl? Cough. Chu Yingzhan coughed dryly. Everyone turned to look at her, thinking that she was about to make a big announcement. Chu Yingzhan raised her chin at Yin Nuashing. There was a playful look on her face, which made him a little speechless. After thinking for a while, he asked tentatively, "Could it be that you know the language of the Dark Age?" Chu Yingzhan grinned. In this strange place, her smile seemed to be contagious. Everyone could not help but relax a little. So that's how it is. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Only now did he realize that she had been saying, all this time. Wasn't she just waiting for him to take the initiative to speak? Then, I'll have to ask Fairy Chu to help everyone take a look at what's written on it. Chu Yingzhan chuckled and ran cheerfully to Yin Nuashing's side. She twisted her waist and pushed him to the side with her, but she occupied the front position and bent down to carefully look at the words on it. After being pushed, Yin Nuashing looked at her with hidden bitterness. However, he did not say anything and retreated to the side. After a long time, Chu Yingzhan looked from the right end of the Skyward Monument to the left end. She took in a few lines of words. Then, she stretched her neck and looked up at the sky, seemingly deep in thought. After a while, the few young men beside Yang Qian could not help but ask, "Fairy Chu, do you understand what's written on it?" Chu Yingzhan nodded. However, she still looked up at the sky, as if she was organizing her thoughts. After a while, even Yin Nuashing could not hold it in anymore. She slowly opened her small mouth and said, "Let me explain it in my own words. Back then, the clansmen of this city all left the God realm and went deep into the star field to find their home planet. In the end, they couldn't find it and lost the method to return to the God realm. They drifted through the star field and finally settled down in a desolate world in the starry sky. Before this god died, he wrote these words and then exiled himself into the starry sky, praying that he would be able to drift back to the God realm." Chu Yingzhan slowly said. "What?" Yang Qian and the others were stunned. After Yin Nuashing heard this, he was also a little stunned. That's it. Chu Yingzhan nodded seriously. Then, she looked at the Skyward Monument again and said, "That's right. That's it. This fairy can vouch for it." So this place was not originally in the realm of the gods. It accidentally fell from the sky and crashed into the sky Illusion Mountain Range? Yang Qian asked in astonishment. They had just deduced some secrets about the Dark Age, but in the end, it was completely unrelated? The Skyward Monument. At least, that's what this passage says. The content that was originally covered up is no longer clear. Chu Yingzhan nodded. Then she said, "If what this god wrote is true, then this world should be in a distant galaxy. Moreover, it should be a very, very long distance away from the realm of the gods. I don't know what happened to make it fall into the realm of the gods. She didn't say anything else because it would make her hair stand on end. Before they entered, Yin Nuashing and Yi, she had deduced that this place should have descended through a large-scale spatial transfer. Moreover, it had happened nearly 10 million years ago. However, the traces left behind in this place should be from that era. At the very least, they hadn't discovered any traces left behind from this era. It didn't mention why this place appeared in a crack in time, nor did it mention how this place came to the realm of the gods. And that thing just now? Yin Nuashing was confused. He kept feeling that something was wrong. He said the last sentence through voice transmission. Many things were involved in the tomb below, so he didn't want to reveal it. He would rather be buried forever. Moreover, he had a naughty thought. If that god didn't float back to the realm of the gods in the end, what would he think if he found out that the city he originally lived in had unexpectedly ended up in the realm of the gods? There's really nothing left. This fairy can guarantee it, Chu Yingxian pouted. She was a little angry that Yin Nuashing didn't believe her. She snorted softly. Seeing her insistence, Yin Nuashing didn't ask any more questions. Although they hadn't known each other for long, he trusted Chu Yingxian to a large extent. He didn't want to think too much about whether she was hiding something from him. In the ruined city, a group of people wandered around aimlessly, digging up the collapsed buildings. Although they were digging up, these decayed buildings were basically crumbling at the slightest touch. It didn't take much effort to clean them up. The space in the crack in time is extremely unstable. Even if there's some kind of power that has preserved this city, it doesn't mean that it won't be eroded. This protective measure doesn't seem to be as well preserved as the rain country that Big Brother Nuo and you've seen. The buildings there only look like they've been there for a long time, but they're not as decayed as here, Yishi said as she stood on the roof and looked at the collapsed buildings around her. Didn't you say that this is a mystery realm? Yin Nuashing couldn't help but mutter, but this is clearly a ruin of a ruined city. I'm not taking the blame for this. I'm not taking the blame. If you want to blame someone, blame those records. I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've only heard of this sky, fantasy mountain range, Yishi muttered. Then, she said, speaking of which, that Yang Qian is the more suspicious one, isn't he? Why would he have the key to open the crack in time here? He said that he bought it from the black market. As for whether it's true or not, I don't know. I'm too lazy to verify it. Let's just take it that he's telling the truth. Yin Nuashing shook her head. The group rummaged through the south side of this ruined city, while Yang Qian and the others went to the north side. If they didn't discover anything on this trip and didn't obtain anything of value, then it would be a huge loss. Moreover, they still had to find a way out now. Could it be that in the tomb? Yishi couldn't help but mutter. However, before she could finish, she was interrupted by Yin Nuashing. Don't mention that place. I'd rather lay in bed for half a year and use the Netherin sword to cut open the entire space than go in there again. Yin Nuashing shuddered. Her resistance made Xian and the others not know whether to laugh or cry. However, they really did find something after a carpet search. There weren't many buildings around this spacious land. It seemed very empty, as if it was the residence of some rich family. And on the collapsed boulders, Yin Nuashing discovered that there were fist-sized round crystals embedded there. However, the crystals themselves didn't interest Yin Nuashing and the others. These are memory crystals. In ancient times, they were used to record all sorts of things in mystic arts. Yishi crouched down in surprise and touched the crystals. She was surprised that the 6 round crystals hadn't disappeared in the torrent of time. They had been preserved after so much time. Memory crystals are very fragile. Ordinary people can shatter them with a hammer. However, they are very durable. When other things have decayed, they might not have disappeared. I just didn't expect that after so many eras, they still haven't disappeared. Furthermore, the mystic arts inside have been preserved completely. Yishi said in surprise. These are 6 post-divine mystic arts. Divine grade, sacred grade. As expected, these are the grades of post-divine mystic arts. Only now did Yin Nuashing understand that the fire of the soul she saw back then was of the same grade as these 6. They were all post-divine mystic arts. What? What? Let me see. Hearing that, Chu Yingxian excitedly jumped up. She threw the eaves in her hand several hundred meters away and ran over to Yun Nuoxing's side. She excitedly knelt down and looked at the crystals. Yun Nuoxing glanced at her and jokingly said, "I know you're excited, but there's no need to be so courteous. Get up." Chu Yingxian glared at him. Without saying anything, her soul power drilled out from between her eyebrows and rushed into the first crystal. She carefully examined it. Yun Nuoxing didn't mind. The memory crystal could be read many times and wouldn't disappear just because it was read once. At this moment, he was also carefully looking at these mystic arts. Xian and the others were urged by Yi Shi and hurriedly put down what they were doing. They sat together and used their soul power to read the contents of the memory crystal. Among the few of them, Yun Nuoxing was the one who learned the most divine grade mystic arts. Even though she was a God Emperor expert, the resources in her hands weren't as terrifying as Yun Nuoxing's. She didn't even have a divine grade mystic art. The only thing that could be considered a divine grade mystic art was the soul-burning art she obtained from Yun Nuoxing. As she advanced into the God Emperor realm, it also advanced to the divine grade. There was also the flame demon burning heaven art that she hadn't fully comprehended yet. Although she hadn't fully comprehended it, she felt that it should be a divine grade mystic art. The advantage of being used to a divine grade mystic art was that it allowed him to fully comprehend it in the shortest amount of time. Although he didn't plan to cultivate and comprehend it on the spot, it would save him a lot of effort to record it down based on his experience. However, after reading it, he frowned. At this moment, there was a ball of bright light flickering in Yun Nuoxing's soul. This was the mystic art that he had just read from the memory crystal. It was like a sun hanging in his mind. It was extremely dazzling, but it made Ziyi complain. "It's too bright. I'm sleeping." Ziyi scratched her hair anxiously on the bed. She turned over and buried her head in the quilt. Lonexen, and Kai Xia, who were beside her, didn't know what to say. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and quickly blocked the light. Then, he frowned and looked at the ball of information. He was somewhat puzzled. The cultivation method in the Age of Darkness seems to be different from now. Yun Nuoxing murmured. Although an ordinary mystic art might not be very helpful to the cultivation of the elements, it would more or less mention that in the realm of the gods, the cultivation of the elements was the most important thing. It was even more important than one's own cultivation. However, this mystic art from the Age of Darkness didn't have any cultivation method related to the elements. Hee, don't you think it's very strange? Hearing a charming laugh, Yun Nuoxing raised his head and saw that Chu Yingxian had unknowingly woken up. Her eyes were smiling and curved like two crescent moons. Besides himself, Chu Yingxian was the first to wake up. This made Yun Nuoxing a little surprised. He originally thought that Yi Shi would be the first to wake up. He didn't expect her to be the first to wake up. If you want to say it, just say it. Seeing that this girl was keeping him in suspense, Yun Nuoxing said indifferently, if he showed a curious look at this time, this girl would probably show off. Sure enough, seeing Yun Nuoxing's indifferent look, the interest on Chu Yingxian's pretty face instantly disappeared. She couldn't help but glare at him and said coquettishly, "Bad guy, can't you show a little curiosity and satisfy my vanity?" Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and smiled bitterly. Then, he said seriously, "I'm very curious." TSK. Chu Yingxian rolled her eyes at Yun Nuoxing's forceful attitude. However, she didn't make a fuss about it this time. She looked at the 6 crystals and said seriously, "The cultivation of the Age of Darkness is not the same as our current cultivation. Our current cultivation is to let the elements fuse with our body and soul. However, in that ancient era, these were all independent. One's own cultivation is one's own cultivation, while the cultivation of the elements is measured by another system. The two are completely unrelated. It is also because of this reason that in the cultivation of the Age of Darkness, one's own cultivation and the elements are separated. The elements have their own special cultivation method. The few that we saw should be used to increase one's own cultivation." Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing opened his mouth in surprise. He didn't expect the cultivation method of the past to be so different from the present. He really didn't know what had happened in these few eras. Chapter 759. Millions of years have passed, and new life has been born from the ruins. A sapling has sprouted from the bones in the ruins, and sparks have been reignited in the starry sky. The desolate starry sky is filled with the aura of life once again. Starlight hangs high on the boundless shore. Under the collapsed wall, there was a withered tree trunk. Perhaps it was a kind of intuition, but Yin Nuoxing casually lifted the low wall and found a paragraph of text left on the tree trunk. They were all very experienced. After recording the 6 profound techniques, they did not sit on the spot to comprehend them. They knew that it was not the time yet. What surprised Yin Nuoxing was that among the 6 profound techniques, there was an elemental profound technique. Unfortunately, it was a gold elemental profound technique. Among the 7 of them, none of them had the gold element. Chu Yingzhan had the wind element. When he found out, Yin Nuoxing even joked about it. No wonder she always had a floating temperament. If I'm not wrong, this should have been left behind at the beginning of the supreme ancient era. At that time, the Age of Darkness had just become a thing of the past, and the great samsara had ended. Ziyi whispered in Yin Nuoxing's mind, "Hey, this is strange. It's always said that no life can cross an era. Look at this. What is this, huh? Why do I find that there are so many life forms that have crossed the imprisonment of an era?" Yin Nuoxing's face was filled with black lines. The common sense he saw was overturned again and again. He did not know what was true anymore. According to common sense, this is indeed the case. I'm not lying to you. However, there are always some life forms that break the restraints of common sense. Otherwise, how do you think those ruins and ancient legends in the realm of the gods were left behind? Ziyi rolled his eyes and said, "When the gods reach a certain level of strength, they can naturally cross the transition of eras. It's just that it's not clear if their lifespan has crossed the limit. The lifespan of the gods is very long, but not as long as you think." "Then how long is it?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. "At least 7 or 8 eras, at most a dozen eras. As for the gods, I don't know," Ziyi said. "So even now, you're still unwilling to tell me what the great samsara is?" Yin Nuoxing sighed helplessly. He was very curious about what this great samsara was, but Ziyi, the only person who knew about it, kept it from him. "What's the use of telling you? Should I tell you that I actually don't know either?" Ziyi grumbled bitterly. He had already asked this question a few thousand times. "Huh?" Yin Nuoxing widened her eyes in astonishment. "No, didn't you already know? You always tell me about the aura of the great samsara and how many times it will happen. How come you don't know?" Ziyi rolled his eyes and took a sip of tea. He said helplessly, "I know about the aura of the great samsara because of Inger. At that time, he brought me all over the place and saw some ancient ruins. He told me about the aura of the great samsara. As for why I can recognize what it looks like after the great samsara, he also told me about it. In fact, although I've been through 3 great samsara since the late stage of the ancient antiquity era, I was sleeping during each great samsara. I've never seen what happened during the great samsara with my own eyes." Hearing this answer, Yin Nuoxing felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He felt inexplicably anxious and wanted to rush into Ziyi's soul to grab him and smack his butt. So he didn't even know about it, and had used all kinds of excuses to fool him for such a long time. "Wouldn't it have been better if you said you didn't know in the beginning? You made me think about it for such a long time." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. "What was this? But it's not like I don't know it all. I know a little about it." Ziyi muttered, Fine. You win. I lose." Yin Nuoxing's mouth twitched. What was the difference between knowing a little and not knowing? After bickering with Ziyi for a while, Yin Nuoxing finally came back to his senses. When he saw Chu Yingzhan in deep thought, his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. He asked, "Fairy Chu Yingzhan, do you know what the great samsara is?" Chu Yingzhan looked up when her thoughts were interrupted. Mei Mao blinked and looked at him. She shook her head and said, "I don't know. What is the great samsara?" It's nothing." When he asked that question, Yin Nuoxing was a little anxious. How would she know such a thing? Even if her background wasn't small, it was unlikely that she would know such a thing. What are you talking about? You whet the appetites of others, and you just let it go like this. You're a person who abandons others after seducing them. Chu Yingxian furrowed her brows, lightly snorted, and said something that made Yin Nuoxing go crazy. However, he couldn't be bothered to reply. Bickering with a girl was the worst choice. If you said one sentence, she would reply 10 or 20 times. After searching the area for a while and turning over the ground, they didn't find anything. After leaving the most eye-catching energy mark, they left. After that, Yin Nuoxing and the others flew towards the largest building in the south, which was the city lord's mansion. After searching for so long, they knew that most of the wealth in the city was probably in the hands of the big families. They searched the small families just now to try their luck. Who said that small families didn't have treasures? The spacious area of the city lord's mansion was very spacious, but it was filled with densely packed words. There were as many words as the sand in the sea. It was unknown how complicated the words were, but one thing was for sure. Such complicated handwriting must have come from the hands of God. Were they deducing? Were they calculating? Seeing the densely packed words, Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat. These deduced symbols and words were not written using ordinary means. The words here were the same as those on the Skyward Monument. They were all written with the blood of the gods. Every stroke, he seemed to be able to imagine that in this spacious place, each and every god was sprinkling their own blood essence, trying to deduce a result. The gods who had left their blood essence here must have been very powerful. He didn't know what it was that made them so focused, even willing to release their blood essence for future generations to observe. These deductions were made by at least 6 gods. Yishi pointed at a few places where the symbols and handwriting were a bit different. There were as many symbols as the stars in the sky, and they were the work of the 6 godly spirits. Furthermore, at the end of the symbols, there was no conclusion written at the end. It was as if the calculations were not over, and there was no conclusion. Chu Yingxian blinked at Mei Mao and stared motionlessly at the symbols. The blood-red symbols seemed to come alive in her eyes. They kept changing forms, as if they were going to rush out of the ground and crash into her. That one glance seemed to make her fall into eternal stillness. She seemed to be able to see the destruction of stars and the fall of ancient stars. It was as if she was wandering in the endless galaxy, lost in time, and lost herself. Hey! A sudden shout made her delicate body tremble. She quickly came back to her senses. When she looked at the blood-red words on the ground again, there was no movement. The strange scene had also disappeared. Chu Yingxian turned her head in a daze and saw Yin Nuoxing grabbing her shoulder with a serious expression. She asked in confusion, "What happened to me just now?" "You almost died. Just a little bit more, and your soul would have ascended to heaven," Yishi said casually, but there was a serious expression on her little face. How can the deductions left behind by the gods be comprehended so easily? If you're not careful, you might have directly fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. Yin Nuoxing put down her hand and looked at the densely packed words with lingering fear. Reincarnation? That's right, it's reincarnation. It felt like I entered a reincarnation. It wasn't the reincarnation of life, but it was a very clear feeling. Chu Yingxian was stunned. She seemed to understand something, but she didn't seem to understand. Her little mouth couldn't stop muttering. Reincarnation, Yin Nuoxing murmured. He looked at the area full of words and symbols and asked in confusion, could it be that these gods are calculating reincarnation? Seeing his expression as if he had made a decision, Yishi's heart thumped. She quickly stood in front of him and blocked his way. "Brother Nuo, don't do anything rash." Yin Nuoxing smiled. He squatted down and rubbed her head. "I cultivate the 6 paths of reincarnation. Let's take a look. It should be fine. If something happens, Xiao Shi, wake me up. If you can't, then beat me up." Xian also wanted to say something, but when she saw his determined expression, she obediently shut her mouth. They all knew that once this guy decided on something, even 9 gods wouldn't be able to pull him back, let alone 9 cows. Yishi bit her red lips. After a while, she nodded sullenly. She turned to the side and made way for him. She couldn't help but reach out and slap Yin Nuoxing's stomach. Yin Nuoxing smiled and walked to the front. He stared at it without blinking. In his eyes, there was a hint of reincarnation, so that he wouldn't fall into reincarnation like Chu Yingzhan. He looked very seriously from the beginning to the end, but it was too difficult and profound. Moreover, he couldn't understand these words and symbols. He could only guess from the artistic conception. This was the theory of the god's deduction. It wasn't something that people at his level could understand. Even if he cultivated the 6 paths of reincarnation, even if he had the spiritual godly body, it was the same. Xian and the others. Mei Mao stared at Yin Nuoxing's face without blinking. If anything happened to him, they would rush out in an instant and call Yin Nuoxing back. Yin Nuoxing slowly tried to figure out. He didn't know if it was because of the 6 paths of reincarnation, but when he looked at these symbols, although he didn't feel like he could see through them completely, he could understand what the gods were doing. This was a very strange state. Unknowingly, he moved like this and watched without sleeping. Almost in the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. It was obvious how much effort was put into this deduction. The god's blood didn't leave a drop of god power, but it emitted a will, an indestructible will. Even after several eras and dozens of eras, it wasn't destroyed. Even when the essence chi disappeared and the god's body perished, the god's blood still flowed proudly here. On the way, Yishi drove Xian and the others to other places to search. It was also a waste of time for them to stay here and look after Yin Nuoxing. However, Xian stubbornly stayed and pushed Feng, a little Bing Er, and Chu Yingzhan out. This made the 3 girls feel a little helpless. After hesitating for a while, they also sighed and rushed to other places. It was indeed a waste of time to stay together, but they also wanted to stay. Seeing Yin Nuoxing immersed in that strange state, Feng was very worried. When the 5th day was about to end, Yin Nuoxing came to the end. The unfinished deduction had stopped here in the end. He didn't know what happened back then that forced him to stop and didn't continue. Feng and the others also came back. They had been away for too long, so they felt uneasy. When the 3 of them came back, Yin Nuoxing came back to his senses and stared at the end with his eyes wide open. Although he still couldn't understand those symbols, there was a line of words left there. Those were the words of the gods. We have fallen into the prison of fate. Who would have thought that everything was wrong from the beginning? We wanted to escape from our predetermined fate, but we fell into an even greater fate. Yin Nuoxing was lost in thought. These are the words left behind by the 6th god. He didn't know what they thought of when they were deducing. This should be the final result of this long deduction, an unfinished result. Reincarnation. Reincarnation. Everything is fake. Everything is fake in the end. We can't escape from this prison in the end. Yin Nuoxing's heartstrings trembled. What were these gods calculating? Weren't they calculating reincarnation? He believed in the existence of reincarnation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have practiced the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Moreover, Feng Yu-ing, the existence of his previous life, had proven the existence of reincarnation to him. However, why did he feel that something was wrong? Speaking of which, what was reincarnation? Was the reincarnation that he knew about the reincarnation of the great Tao? Yin Nuoxing wasn't sure either. This secret had been passed down since the ancient mythological era until now, and there had never been a positive answer. 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Yin Nuoxing looked at the bottom. There was actually a heart sutra left behind there. Moreover, this heart sutra was the same as the one he practiced. No wonder I felt a sense of familiarity when I looked at it. So it's this. The deductions left behind here are all related to reincarnation, but they're all incomplete. The 6 paths of reincarnation technique that I practice is complete. In other words, the deduction here is the beginning of the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Later on, someone perfected it and spread it out. That's how the complete 6 paths of reincarnation technique is now. Yin Nuoxing's bright eyes flickered slightly as a bold guess appeared in his heart. This is the 6 paths of reincarnation technique that Brother Nuo practices? Yi Shi, who was listening from the side, was also a little surprised and doubtful. Ever since she found out that Yin Nuoxing practiced the 6 paths of reincarnation technique on the Xianlong continent, she had investigated it after returning. However, she didn't find anything particularly noteworthy. The only possibility she knew was that the 6 paths of reincarnation technique was related to the legendary reincarnation emperor. The 6 paths of reincarnation technique left behind by the ancestors is enough to see through reincarnation and enter it with one's body. However, one doesn't want to disappear in time. When one wants to use reincarnation to escape, it's already too late. I only hope that the incomplete 6 paths of reincarnation technique can allow the descendants to escape from here. Chapter 760. I still haven't found anything strange about this place. We've already turned over half of the city. Yin Nuoxing and the others didn't stop. In half a day, they turned the southern part of the city upside down. However, other than what they saw at the beginning, they didn't find anything else. Other than the incomplete 6 paths of reincarnation technique and the words written on the Skyward Monument, there didn't seem to be any traces or valuable things left behind. Hey, do we really not need to pay attention to that thing? Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but ask as they passed by the city lord's mansion again, pointing at the vast land full of ruins. Don't worry, it's okay. The complete chapter is with me. Yin Nuoxing pointed at his head, then smiled and said, if I'm not wrong, the 6 paths of reincarnation technique should be able to tear open the space crack here and return to the normal space. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but mutter, I'm still very concerned about the sarcophagus below. Stop. If you want to go, you can go by yourself. I really don't want to go down again. I still have a psychological trauma about the underground. Hearing her mention the underground, Yin Nuoxing's face darkened, and he rolled his eyes. You're afraid of death. What's there to be afraid of in a tomb? Isn't it just some stuff buried after death? When they were alive, they were just like us. They've been dead for so many years, so why are you still afraid? Chu Yingzhan rolled her eyes at him. I don't know who's holding on to me down there. Yin Nuoxing looked at her in annoyance, then shook his head. When I was walking down there, I felt very uneasy. There was an indescribable strangeness. In the end, we didn't find the reason why the souls of the gods buried their mutated. Maybe there's an answer in the sarcophagus, but we can't understand the runes on it, so there's no way to open it. In any case, I really want to run right now. I don't want to stay here for even a moment longer. In this strange place, every inch of space is filled with a strange aura, making me feel very uncomfortable. Yin Nuoxing rubbed the space between his eyebrows and sighed. He had been to many places in the past few years. He had been to the Forbidden Land, the Tianshan Taoist Court, and the Deep Sea, but none of the places made him feel so uneasy. Even in the Forbidden Land, there was no such commotion. It made him want to turn around and leave. Coward, Chu Yingzhan muttered in a very low voice. She originally thought that her voice was already soft enough, but she didn't expect that Yin Nuoxing would still hear it. Seeing him angrily glaring at her, Chu Yingzhan shuddered and immediately said with a flattering smile, All right, this fairy was wrong. Don't stare at me like that. It's so scary. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. You also know how to be scared? Chu Yingzhan snorted and turned her head, rolling her eyes at him. She was also a little confused. Although she couldn't see through Yin Nuoxing's realm, she could still sense the energy he used unintentionally. He should only be a demonic rank 2 seal, but she was a demigod rank 8. Yet, she felt like there was no difference between them. In fact, when she faced him, she felt a sense of pressure from the bottom of her heart. This pressure was much stronger than when she faced Yi, so she didn't dare to speak without restraint. Let's go to the northern city to find Yang Qian and the others. If there's nothing else, let's go out, Yin Nuoxing said. Xian and Yishi nodded, and Chu Yingzhan could only nod. However, she really couldn't let go of that stone coffin and what the heaven-facing monument said. This world should be in the star field, but why did it fall into the myriad god realm? She was very curious and wanted to know everything. She wanted to understand everything, But when she turned around and saw Yin Nuoxing looking like he couldn't wait to leave, she felt a little dejected. It seemed that she could only suppress this matter. After all, no matter how stubborn she was, she really didn't dare to go there alone. In a short while, they went from the most difficult part of this dilapidated city to the heaven-facing monument in the middle. Before Yin Nuoxing and the others could go to the north, they saw Yang Qian and the others gathered in front of the heaven-facing monument. Moreover, there were many more people. These people seemed to be the ones who got separated at the beginning. Yang Qian. The sudden call woke Yang Qian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. He hurriedly stood up and saw Yin Nuoxing and the others descend from the sky and land in front of them, giving them a fright. "Have you finished exploring the north?" Yin Nuoxing glanced at the north. "I guess so. I didn't find anything noteworthy. I don't think there's anything left in this place." Yang Qian nodded and sighed. There was a bitter look on his face. Not only did they not get anything from this trip, they even lost 6 people. He felt a little helpless. Yin Nuoxing saw his expression, thought for a moment, and said, "There are deductions left behind by a few deities in the southern city Lord Manor. It's very scary. If you're not careful, you'll fall into it. Moreover, there's a way out." "Really?" Yang Qian's heart skipped a beat. He looked at him in disbelief, and many thoughts ran through his mind. "Yes, there's no time to lose. Let's go out now. If we stay here for too long, we'll feel uncomfortable." Yin Nuoxing nodded. Hearing this, Yang Qian thought for a moment and also nodded. Anyway, he had the key with him, and there would be opportunities to come back in the future. The discovery of this trip had already proved that this place was not something they could interfere with. It was better to leave first. Seeing that he agreed, Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly. He did not care about what Yang Qian was thinking and also nodded. Then, the power of space and the 6 paths of reincarnation circulated together. His palm gently moved in front of him, and a wide spatial crack suddenly tore open. What was outside was the original forest of the Sky Fantasy mountain range. It worked. Yin Nuoxing was a little surprised to see that the spatial crack was torn open in one try. He thought that they would have to leave the city, or that they would have to try a few more times to succeed. Looking at the familiar sky outside, everyone couldn't help but let out a mournful howl. They could finally leave this place. Staying in this godforsaken place for half a month was simply torture. "Be careful. Let's go." Seeing that Yin Nuoxing nodded, Yang Qian also waved his hand and led the others into the spatial crack. After all of them left, Yin Nuoxing let Xian and the others go first. Finally, he kept a close eye on Chu Yingxian to prevent her from doing anything stupid. I won't be impulsive. That place is so creepy. I don't dare to go alone. Are you satisfied now?" Seeing that he was staring at her, Chu Yingxian pouted and looked at Yin Nuoxing with an aggrieved expression. He could not help but laugh bitterly. Wasn't he afraid that she would really do something stupid? Before leaving the spatial crack, Chu Yingxian turned back to look at the place behind her. After a while, she sighed and entered the spatial crack. Yin Nuoxing also hurriedly followed. When the spatial crack closed, no one could see that the run-down city suddenly shook. It had been half a month since they left the burning flame city. It was only when they returned that they could finally relax. From the beginning to the end, no one had noticed them. After returning to Burning Flame City, Yang Qian hurriedly went to the branch of the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. Seeing that he was in a hurry, Yin Nuoxing did not say anything. He had already said what needed to be said. Looking at his posture, he guessed that he wanted some gods to explore. As for whether they could come out after entering, he did not care. He could only say that he would definitely not go to that place a second time. After returning, Chu Yingxian also hurriedly bid farewell. Looking at the mysterious look on her face, Yin Nuoxing did not say much. They had met by chance and had known each other for half a month. Although they quarreled a lot along the way, their relationship could not be considered bad, but it could not be considered good either. He guessed that Xian and the other girls had already become friends. Or perhaps they had not. But to be honest, Yin Nuoxing felt that he was not qualified to care about that girl's matters. He should let her torment herself. 3 days later, in the training room of the mansion where Yun Nuoxing and the others were. Concentrate your energy and seal your soul within your body. Concentrate all your energy to condense your spirit and soul. Concentrate the origin of the 5 elements and release all the energy in the carrier. On the stone bed, a slender and beautiful figure sat cross-legged. Some fragrant sweat appeared on her beautiful face. Her clothes were also soaked in sweat, revealing her alluring curves. A 5-colored energy whirlwind blew around her body. 2 basin-sized balls of light released a dazzling light beside her body. A shocking energy was rapidly condensing. In front of Xian, Yun Nuoxing stood by the bed and pressed his palm gently on her head. The brilliant power of the stars illuminated her body, making it seem as if there were stars twinkling around her. With the influx of the power of the stars, the demonic aura in Xian's body also became turbulent. Not only did it not reject the existence of the power of the stars, but it also perfectly blended with it. The demonic aura was also subtly changing, and the energy carrier in her lower abdomen trembled slightly. When the energy in the carrier was completely drained, Xian's delicate body trembled slightly. She resisted the waves of dizziness that came from her mind and formed a hand seal with her trembling hands. As her hand seal changed, the demonic aura, 5 elemental energy, and power of the stars that filled her meridians all gathered towards her lower abdomen at the same time. However, they did not rush into the energy carrier in one go. Instead, they began to rapidly compress and condense at the side. Use more strength. The initial contact between the demonic aura and divine energy is more difficult than the previous 2 times. Use your soul and mental strength to suppress it. Don't worry about anything else. I'm right here. Yun Nuoxing's soft voice sounded in Xian's mind at an extremely appropriate time. Nodding slightly, Xian focused her mind. Majestic soul and mental strength gushed out and crazily kneaded the 3 energies together. She began to compress the 3 balls of energy that were originally the size of a fist. That majestic force also caused the 3 balls of energy to begin to resist, constantly surging and boiling. However, the power of the stars was controlled by Yun Nuoxing, and it did not really participate in the compression and fusion of the energies. It was only a regulator between the demonic aura and the 5 elemental energy. The degree of resistance from the demonic aura and the 5 elemental energy also gave Xian a fright. However, after a moment, she fiercely gritted her teeth. Her soul and mental strength gathered together and wrapped around the 2 balls of energy, then suddenly collapsed towards the center. The 2 balls of energy were also shocked by this violent force. After a momentary stalemate, they could not withstand it and were passively compressed. When the fist-sized ball of energy was compressed to the size of a fingernail, the black and 5-colored energies trembled slightly and suddenly fused together. The drop of energy that was born was not much different from the 5 elemental energy, except that its color was slightly darker. Perhaps it was due to the adjustment of the power of the stars, or perhaps it had accidentally fused a little bit of it. The dark 5-colored energy had a few sparkling spots of light. After the drop of energy was formed, Xian's delicate body trembled slightly again. Her clothes were soaked in sweat, tightly sticking to her delicate skin. The faintly discernible spring scenery made the secret room a little ambiguous all of a sudden. Taking a moment to catch her breath, Xian's mind moved. Her soul power wrapped around the new drop of energy, and she placed it into the energy carrier. As soon as the new drop of energy entered the energy carrier, the energy that had spread throughout her body suddenly seemed to be pulled. All of it rapidly circulated along her meridians and then crashed into the energy carrier. Bang! A soft, muffled sound quietly rang out from within her body. Xian's small mouth spat out a soft groan, and her pretty face paled. From emptying her energy to compressing it, and finally letting it pull on its own, she had exhausted all of her energy. With a light gasp, Xian's entire body fell to the side, exhausted. She leaned against Yun Nuoxing's body, and her voluptuous chest rose and fell violently with her rapid breathing. Her soaked clothes fell slightly, revealing a bit of her snow-white skin that would make people go crazy. Yun Nuoxing secretly took a glance and dryly coughed in her heart without blushing or panicking. She then took off her windbreaker and covered Xian with it. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her into her arms. With a gentle smile, she said, "Little girl, congratulations. You're already a demigod rank powerhouse. Once you awaken your divinity, you'll be a full-fledged demigod rank." He, a 26 or 27-year-old demigod rank powerhouse. I reckon there aren't many in history. You're much more powerful than me. Yun Nuoxing's hand gently stroked Xian's dark purple hair as she smiled gently. Chapter 761. Did you succeed? The door of the practice room suddenly opened, and 3 peeping heads popped out from the corner of the door. When they saw the scene in the practice room, they were all stunned. Then they sensed Xian's aura, so they walked in with relief and sat down beside the bed. Okay. Yun Nuoxing nodded, then lowered his head to look at Xian, who was still gasping for breath. He hugged Xian a little tighter. Then awaken your divinity. Yishi nodded and walked to the bed. She made a gesture of cupping her hands and raised them slightly. Then, strands of golden light of divinity passed through her palms and condensed on her sleeves. Soon, it condensed into a ball of golden light full of light, and bits of golden particles flew around the ball of light. Now, Xian just finished his promotion. Why don't you rest for a while? Yun Nuoxing looked at Yi Shi, then looked at Xian. It's okay, and the best time to awaken your divinity is when you succeed in your promotion. When your body is at its weakest, it's also the most relaxed time. The divinity will completely cleanse your body, and Xian is now in a coma. He doesn't have to bear that kind of pain, Yishi said. Yun Nuoxing heard this, thought about it, and felt that it seemed to make sense, so he said, "Okay, but will it be okay without the guidance of the Holy Awakening Tablet? Brother Nual, I'm the God Emperor. I don't need that thing. The Holy Awakening Tablet is just to make it easier for low-level gods to help others awaken. For high-level gods, it's not essential. Even Brother Nual, if you want, you can help others awaken their divinity," Yishi said, looking at him angrily. "I'll pass." Yun Nuoxing scratched his head awkwardly. Yishi focused on condensing the ball of light in her hand into a thumb-sized golden crystal. She glanced at Xian, then climbed onto the stone bed. She held the golden crystal in her small hand and gently stuffed it into Xian's chest. The golden crystal slowly drilled into Xian's chest like liquid. Yun Nuoxing also focused, nervously holding Xian's jade-like hand, afraid that she would wake up from the pain. Yishi also held her breath in concentration. In her slender arm, strands of golden light flowed, like a brilliant golden river. Puff! However, just as the few of them were waiting, a soft sound attracted their attention. Soon after, they saw that the golden crystal had suddenly drilled out from Xian's chest and was sent flying. The golden crystal flew in the air and was caught by foam. She looked down at the golden crystal in confusion, then looked at Yi Shi in confusion. She was a mythical beast, so she didn't have any divinity awakening process. Since she was born, divinity had been flowing in her soul and spirit, so she didn't know what was wrong. Yi Shi also opened her small mouth and looked at the person in Yun Nuoxing's arms with a strange expression. Then she took the golden crystal from Feng, and stuffed it into Xian's body again. But this time it went into his smooth forehead. Yi Shi watched as some energy ripples appeared in front of her forehead. The golden crystal once again entered her body. Before she could even turn her gaze away, a golden light suddenly burst out and directly hit her forehead. She was stunned and didn't even care that a red that had appeared on her forehead. Little Shi, what's going on?" Yun Nuoxing reached out to take the golden crystal and looked at Yi Shi in confusion. Yi Shi rubbed her forehead and shook her head blankly. Just as she was about to mutter something, she seemed to have thought of something and raised her head in a daze. Then she put her small hand between Xian's eyebrows, and a wisp of soul power came out and went in between his eyebrows. When Yishi was investigating, Yin Nuoxing was worried. Although he didn't understand what this meant, he was very worried that Xian wouldn't be able to awaken his divinity like this. Sigh. After Yishi put down her hand, she let out a long sigh. This sigh made Yin Nuoxing's heart skip a beat. Was it really as he expected? I really can't help this time. Yishi sighed and shook her head, making foam, and little Bing air look serious. What's going on? This girl can't awaken her divinity? Yin Nuoxing looked nervous, and his heart sank. Yishi shook her head, then looked at Xian helplessly and said, because her divinity has already awakened. Yin Nuoxing and the others, already awakened? Already awakened? What do you mean? Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched, and he looked down at Xian, feeling a little confused. It means exactly what it means. Xian's divinity has already awakened, and it's changing his body very gently. He'll probably be fine after a good night's sleep. Yishi threw the golden crystal into her mouth and swallowed it. Then, she licked her red lips and said, a long time ago, before the holy tablet and other methods to guide the awakening of divinity, everyone's divinity awakened on their own. This is also a difficult point. Some people have good awareness and awaken their divinity after a few days, but those who have poor awareness probably can't figure it out even after a few years, so there's no way for them to completely advance to the demigod level. For people like Xian, they probably awakened their divinity by accident. After all, the five elements body is close to the great path of heaven and earth. When Brother Nuo reaches the demigod level, his divinity will probably automatically awaken. It's just that his divinity will be awakened ahead of time, Yishi said. Yin Nuoxing scratched his cheeks. It sounded like there was nothing wrong with it. Now, many things he just thought of dissipated, and he let out a big sigh of relief. Yishi's wine-red eyes turned, and she seemed to have thought of something. She couldn't help but tease. I suggest that Brother Nuo will put Xian back in a room and wait for her to awaken her divinity before going to see her. You'll be surprised. Yin Nuoxing stared blankly. But after a moment, Yishi waved her small hand and said, forget it. It won't be too late to do this when Xian reaches the demigod level. It's still a bit early. You don't understand. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at her in confusion. Exhaling softly, Yin Nuoxing closed his eyes. His consciousness followed the astral energy and gradually sank into Xian's body, going straight to her lower abdomen. Looking at the energy carrier there, he could feel that the original demon chi and the five elements energy inside were slowly being assimilated by the new energy. Although the volume was more than 10 times smaller, the energy contained inside was definitely more than 100 times stronger than before. The energy compression, this time, wasn't simply compressing the demon chi to cause a qualitative change and finally turning it into divine yuan. Instead, it was compressing and fusing the demon chi and the five elements energy together to cause a qualitative change. Just like Yin Nuoxing's astral energy, although it was separated from the path of divine yuan, this energy would only be stronger than divine yuan. If there's nothing else, let's go and rest. When Xian wakes up, we'll go to the elemental plane. Gently stroking Xian's beautiful hair, Yin Nuoxing looked out of the window. They had been out for more than half a month, and there was only a month left for them. Counting the time they had spent on the road, this month wouldn't be too long. The next morning, 2 fiery red suns spurted out strands of multicolored light, reflecting the mist in the space, sprinkling down traces of light. On the horizon, one beautiful mountain peak after another was gradually dyed red. Yin Nuoxing woke up early and stood on the roof of her residence. She looked at the awakened burning flame city, then looked at the Yanli Academy, and finally stared straight at the 2 suns that had also just woken up. Only when 2 black spots were left in front of her eyes did she close her eyes. Facing the 2 suns, she took a few deep breaths, as if she was absorbing the essence of the sun. Her entire body was bathed in the golden red light. Little star, you're awake? The soft sound behind him stunned Yin Nuoxing. He turned around in shock. He didn't expect this girl to recover so quickly. He thought that she would be unconscious for another 2 or 3 days. Zian also jumped onto the roof of the mansion. She had freshened up a little, and her hair was still a little wet. Her snow-white dress dragged on the ground. She stood beside him, facing the morning glow. A cool breeze blew past, and her clothes fluttered along with her long hair. There was a gentle smile on her beautiful face, and her eyes were like crescent moons. Her graceful figure was covered in the golden morning light, and her entire person emitted a faint golden luster. She became more and more transcendent. Her ethereal temperament was like a goddess that did not belong to this world. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his eyes, suspecting that he hadn't washed his face properly. However, when he took a closer look, he couldn't help but gasp in surprise. This girl had become even more beautiful after awakening her divinity. She had become even more ethereal. That mesmerizing smile would probably subdue many people under her pomegranate dress, especially that pair of starry eyes that were filled with unconcealable confidence, instantly raising her temperament to an extremely high level. Mesmerizing without paying for it. TSK, TSK, TSK. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smack his lips. This girl, he probably wouldn't be able to subdue her in the future. No wonder she said that she had to wait until she reached the elementary deity level. At that time, her divinity would be stimulated to perfection. At that time, Xian's temperament would probably be like a fairy. Xian tilted her head and smiled sweetly at him. She reached out her lily-white hands and tightly hugged Yin Nuoxing into her embrace. She pursed her cherry lips and lightly tapped his cheek. Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows and lightly touched Xian's smooth forehead with his forehead. Then, he gently extricated himself from her soft embrace, held her lily-white hand, and jumped into the courtyard. He smiled faintly and said, "Let's go. Let's continue our journey." Yin Nuoxing and the rest tidied up a little, woke up a few lazy bums, and closed a shop that had only done 2 transactions. Before they left, Bing Air even brought Yin Nuoxing and the rest of the food street to pack up a huge pile of food. Seeing how fast they were spending money, Yin Nuoxing's face couldn't help but twitch. This girl probably bought enough food for 5 people for a year. Bing Air asked Yin Nuoxing for a space ring. Satisfied, she packed up the food and left the food street, leaving behind a group of despairing shop owners. They hastily ended their business for the day. The ingredients were all cooked and packed up outside the eastern city walls of Burning Flame City. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the Burning Flame College. She originally wanted to greet Lu Feng and the rest, but after thinking for a while, she dismissed the idea. It would take half a day to go back and forth from the eastern city gates. At this moment, there were many people gathered outside the eastern city walls. They all looked like they were fully armed, and there were many god-level experts. Among them, the strongest person that Yin Nuoxing saw was an emperor of the Netherworld expert. Furthermore, these people were all gathered together. The emperor of the Netherworld led the team, and the sons of gods and divine kings were the team members. Those who didn't know would think that this was a team that was going to conquer the Forbidden Zone. Yishi's eyes turned, and her soul power silently spread out. After a while, she said to Yin Nuoxing and the rest, "The news about the Sky Illusion Mountain Range has spread. These people seem to want to explore the ancient city ruins." Yin Nuoxing was stunned and asked strangely, "Did Yang Qian and the rest spread the news?" "I'm not sure. Although I heard the news, I didn't know where it came from." She shook her head. Moreover, in the past 2 days, the space crack has been forcefully torn open and can't be closed. We can speculate that this is the work of a magic array grandmaster. There seems to be some changes in the ancient city. Many of those who trespassed died, and among them was a magic array grandmaster, Yishi said softly. A rank 8? Yin Nuoxing was a little shocked. Yes, he just reached rank 8. Perhaps it's fortunate that nothing happened when we went there, Yishi muttered. Yishi muttered with lingering fear. She then said, I heard some new news. This matter might be led by the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. We can already confirm that this information was released by Yang Qian. It's probably difficult for a chamber of commerce to swallow that place. Oh, Yin Nuashing responded. He didn't care much about this matter. He didn't have any intention to explore that place. When he first stepped into that place, he felt uncomfortable all over. He didn't expect that something would really happen. After stopping for a while and not hearing any more news, Yin Nuashing led the rest of the group and soared into the sky. They turned into a golden flowing light and disappeared into the horizon. Chapter 762. In the vast and boundless sky, a brilliant golden light flashed, tearing a small hole in space. The hole quickly healed, and the warm sunlight didn't make it seem like autumn or winter at all. If one looked closely at the golden light, they would discover that it was a giant purplish-black sword that was 10 meters long. A few girls were casually sitting on the giant sword, chatting and laughing along the way. The atmosphere was very cheerful, and there wasn't any sense of boredom. These girls were naturally Yin Nuashing and the others. However, the figure of the rainbow-haired youth had disappeared again, and he had turned into a rainbow-haired girl. This time, he had even dressed up meticulously. It was obvious that he had been tormented by Xian and the others while he was sleeping. The girls seemed to have unknowingly turned dressing up Yin Nuashing into a form of entertainment. Every time they saw him getting angry and unable to open his mouth, they couldn't help but giggle. "Can you stop messing around like this? My heart is so tired." Yin Nuashing looked dejectedly at the girls who were smiling like flowers. The clothes he was wearing were getting more and more beautiful day by day, and he was getting more and more noble day by day. He could no longer see the characteristics of a young man, and he estimated that if he wore women's clothes for a long time, he would probably go crazy. Although that was what he thought, he didn't know how many times he had worn women's clothes, but his mind was still as stable as ever. No. Xian and the others giggled as they looked at him, their hands fiddling with his body. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched, and he was about to cry. Along the way, they would occasionally stop for a day when they saw a city and ask for directions. Until now, they still hadn't found where the so-called elemental plains was. They only heard from Lu Feng that it was roughly in the northeast. As for how far it was, they didn't know. This place wasn't marked on the treasure map either. Speaking of this treasure map, Yin Nuashing discovered something strange. Everything that happened in the God Realm after the ancient era, such as what mountain ranges were formed or what additional things were added, wasn't marked on the map. The most direct observation was the 4 great holy cities of the Divine Prefecture. The 4 great holy cities on the treasure map were drawn by Yin Nuashing himself. Yuanding City. Based on its name alone, one might think that it was a big city that focused on forging cauldrons. However, in reality, it was a city that focused on alchemy. In this city that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles, alchemy could be said to be popular throughout the entire city. Although its location was a little remote, it was still very famous in the Ganyuan region. In the gods' world, there were many secondary professions that had been passed down since ancient times. Many secondary professions had become simple to begin with, and there were no longer too many restrictions. Aside from alchemists who needed the element of metal, there was a branch of alchemy that anyone could come into contact with. However, if one wanted to make a name for themselves and become a true alchemist, they would need to possess the element of fire. Aside from that, even if they borrowed fire from others, they could still complete alchemy. However, this didn't make alchemists seem cheap. It was hard to say whether alchemists were better than alchemists or blacksmiths. It could only be said that they each had their own strengths and couldn't be directly compared. Alchemists were the same as other secondary professions. They were talents that the major forces were in short supply of. When this group of people gathered together, it would drive the movements of the major and minor forces. In Yuanding City, it was possible to meet an alchemist just by walking on the streets. It was also because of this that many forces would recruit alchemists here. With so many forces gathered together, the city became particularly chaotic. TSK, TSK, TSK. Thousands of miles high in the sky, Yin Nuashing and the others appeared outside Yuanding City. When they looked down at the exquisite city that was built with uncanny workmanship, they couldn't help but click their tongues in admiration. The exquisite layout started from the city walls, which were divided into several layers, and spread towards the center. The city walls were thousands of feet high and were so white that they reflected the sunlight. Looking at the city walls from the outside, it was incomparably dazzling. But looking from the inside, one could only see that it was a white city wall. There was nothing special about it. Within the white city walls, huge strings of golden runes flickered. One could faintly feel a terrifying energy fluctuation surging in the air, causing one to be intimidated just by looking at it. In the sky above the city, there was an inverted bowl that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles, enveloping the entire city. With the airspace sealed, if one wanted to enter the city, they could only pass through the 4 city gates in the north, south, east, and west. Even Nether King experts could only obediently land on the ground and walk through the city gates. Anyone who descended from the sky would be judged as an attack by the array and thus be defended. This defensive barrier seems to be set up by a martial grandmaster. It covers Yuanding City all year round. Even Nether Kings would have to spend a lot of effort to break through it. As for God Emperors, it would be difficult for them to break through it in a short period of time. Yishi also looked down from the sky and smiled. I think, seeing Yin Nuashing's terrible smile, Xian and the others couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yishi also hurriedly stopped him from having such thoughts. This defensive barrier was used to defend against the beast tide in the past. Although Big Brother Nuo can destroy it with a single strike of his sword, please don't do such a meaningless thing. I'm just saying, you're exaggerating. Yin Nuashing crossed his arms and lightly snorted. Did they really think he was a little tyrant who could tear down a city? Let's go. Obediently walk through the city gates. What is Big Brother Nuo looking for called again? Yishi smiled helplessly and changed the topic. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing took out a crystal ball from his pendant and glanced inside. He said, colored glass, spirit sand, mixed yuan iron essence, star omen stone, boundless divine crystal. Hearing Yin Nuashing list out more than 20 things in detail, Yishi felt a headache coming on. At least half of the things listed were things she had never heard of before. The other half that she had heard of made her feel a little apprehensive. Primal Chaos Immortal Stone. When Yin Nuashing listed out one of them, Yishi's expression changed slightly. She looked up in a daze and said in astonishment, Primal Chaos Immortal Stone? HM? Yin Nuashing stopped and looked up at her. He nodded. What's wrong? Nothing. Yishi shook her head. She felt a little apprehensive, but she didn't show it on her face. Why are you looking for so many high-grade materials? Some of them are even comparable to level 12 materials exclusive to gods. They could be ranked among the level 12 materials themselves. You're asking me. Can I say that I don't know? Yin Nuashing put down the crystal ball and laughed dryly. Yishi and the others widened their eyes. Yin Nuashing shrugged and said, Of course I'm not the one who is using these things. That guy at the Gathering Fate Pavilion asked me to look for them. I haven't heard of most of the things here. They don't belong to the realm of the gods. I have to go to other worlds to look for them. The Myriad Realm Book? Yishi couldn't help but ask when she thought of a possibility. Yin Nuashing nodded and said, I didn't plan to tell you because it wasn't too important. I just didn't expect to hear about a few rare treasures here, so I came to take a look. Colored glass, spirit sand, star omen stone. Xian muttered. They had heard about these things not long ago. They could be found in Origin Cauldron City, but it would be a little troublesome to obtain them. Hey, in this city where alchemy is second nature, 85% of the people are alchemists. Why would anyone collect these precious materials? Yin Nuashing looked down at the city below and rolled her eyes. Then she thought of something and smiled. It seems like we should take the alchemist test, right? Little star, how many years have you been thinking about it? You still remember? Xian couldn't help but smile. At that time, she had thought of taking the alchemist test at the Spatial Trade Fair in Lihuan City, but she still hadn't done it after so many years. Yin Nuashing straightened her back and said righteously, That's right, people of high status tend to be forgetful. That's right. Big Brother Nuo, with your half-baked theoretical knowledge, I'm afraid you can't even become a demon-grade alchemist, Yishi teased. Cough. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly and rubbed Yishi's wine-red hair. She said, with my talent, I can learn anything I want. I just need to put my heart into it. That's right. Yishi muttered. Then, she was pulled into Yin Nuashing's arms. The nether void sword shrunk back into Yin Nuashing's body, and the group fell straight down to the ground. They suddenly descended from the sky and landed on the main road in front of the city wall. The sudden appearance of the few of them gave the surrounding people a fright. Just as they steadied themselves, Yin Nuashing and the few of them walked towards the city. Along the way, they attracted the gazes of quite a number of people. In this group of people, even he was disguised as a young lady. The appearances of this group of people were all at the level of a calamity. Adding on their tall figures and their distant auras, it caused the surrounding gazes to become much hotter. Xian and the others were used to these heated gazes, but Yin Nuashing still couldn't get used to it. He couldn't get used to people looking at him with such heated gazes. This level was still bearable for the time being. However, when he saw that some people seemed to want to come up and strike up a conversation, his eyes that were suffused with a substantial light suddenly narrowed. A wave of coldness quietly spread out, causing quite a few people to shiver and quickly shift their gazes away. The smiles of those people who walked up also froze. However, they still walked towards them and brushed past each other. The cold chill only quietly dissipated when they walked into this grand and unique city. It's so cold. Yishi glanced at him and patted his thigh lightly. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes when he heard this. He didn't want to be hit on by people for no reason. He wasn't a girl. As for hitting on the people around him, that would be even more wishful thinking. After entering the city, Yin Nuashing scanned the city with his eyes. The population in the city had reached a frightening level. Although it wasn't as crowded as one another, it was almost there. The streets were more than 100 feet wide, but they were filled with people. On both sides of the streets, the most common things were some medicinal halls and alchemy shops. There were fewer other shops. The rich aroma of pills almost made one sneeze. This scene made Yin Nuashing feel a little emotional. They had just entered, and it was only an ordinary shop, but the pills produced were already so powerful. He wondered how high the quality of the pills produced by the medicinal halls and alchemy shops near the center were. Do you still remember the name of that place? Yin Nuashing turned around and looked at Xian. He calculated the time and felt that it might be better to go there now. Xian nodded and said, it should be called Tianqin Hall. It is said that it is quite famous. However, there is only one boss, which means that there is only one alchemist. Hearing the name, Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. Then, he pulled a passerby and asked for the location of Tianqin Hall. The passerby who was pulled by Yin Nuashing had a straight face. However, when he saw Yin Nuashing and the others, his eyes suddenly widened. He quickly pointed in a direction to Yin Nuashing and the others and eagerly told them about Tianqin Hall in detail. Fairies, if you're looking for a high-level alchemy hall, I recommend the Myriad Medicine House. It has the same name as Tianqin Hall. There is only one boss in Tianqin Hall, and he is very hot-tempered. He doesn't want to do business because he is a high-level immortal-level alchemist. He even injured his customers. If you want to go there, you must be careful. After thanking the passerby who kept talking, Yin Nuashing rubbed his stiff face. Then, he rolled his eyes and said, sure enough, girls have an innate advantage. So, little star should be a girl. Xian covered his mouth and chuckled. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at her and reached out to ruffle her hair. Xian was already used to it and continued to look at him teasingly. After leaving the crowded area unhurriedly, Yin Nuashing and the others sped up and jumped onto the roof. After a while, the medicinal hall named Tianqin Hall appeared in their line of sight. There were not many people in this area, and it was a little quiet. There was only one medicinal hall nearby. There were no other shops, and they were all empty. They landed on the street and looked at the shop. There was no smell of medicine here. The shop was a little old. One side of the signboard had fallen down and was hanging on it shakily. It was simple and unadorned, but it seemed too old. There were some cracks in the corners, and it looked more like a dilapidated house. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched slightly. He He took a deep breath and nodded at Zian and the others. Then, he slowly walked into the shop. The interior of the store was not very spacious. A night pearl hung in the middle of a narrow passageway, illuminating the passageway. The interior of the store appeared rather cold and cheerless. Empty cabinets were placed in all four directions of a circular store. It seemed that something had been displayed in those places before. He glanced around and finally stopped in front of him. There, a figure was sleeping soundly with his head buried in the ground. Snoring sounds could be heard from his nose. He seemed to be sleeping soundly. Chapter 763. Yin Nuoxing and the others stood for a while and looked at the sleeping figure with interest. Although his sideburns were white, they could still feel his surging aura. This high-grade, immortal-grade alchemist was also a netherworld king expert. Yin Nuoxing opened his mouth a few times, wanting to wake him up, but he couldn't bear to do so. Yin Nuoxing hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he didn't say anything to disturb this person. He looked at the other parts of the shop. Although the cabinets were empty, and some of them were covered in a thick layer of dust, there were still some jade bottles and jade boxes placed in the middle. Inside the boxes, there were all top-quality pills and herbs. The wooden cabinets were already worn to a certain extent. A casual touch might cause it to collapse. Yin Nuoxing picked up a jade bottle, opened the lid, and took a whiff of the elixir fragrance. Then, he closed the lid again and shook his head gently. Based on his experience of eating all kinds of peerless saint-grade elixirs, although these immortal-grade elixirs were precious, their quality was probably only low-grade among the immortal-grade elixirs. The elixir fragrance was also mixed with other smells. He didn't know if it was because they weren't preserved well or if there were some problems during the refining process. No wonder no one came. The quality of these elixirs is too low. Yishi also picked up a jade bottle. She took a whiff and wrinkled her little nose. What elixir fragrance! These elixirs are going to stink. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Although the immortal-grade elixirs weren't preserved well, they weren't as bad as she said. However, with her strength and vision, it was normal that she didn't like them. Fortunately, we're not here to buy elixirs. If we buy elixirs here, we'll lose a lot of money. Yishi smacked her lips and put the jade bottle back on the wooden cabinet. She even patted her sleeves lightly as if she felt dirty just by touching it. It was unknown whether these words had awakened the gray-haired figure, or if he had just woken up, but the man suddenly raised his head from the counter, revealing an unsmiling face. His face was pale and slightly dry, and his eyebrows had all fallen off, but one could vaguely see that he was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man raised his head. He didn't even open his eyes. He sniffed and suddenly began to drool. He chuckled and said, "The fragrance of a woman." Yin Nuoxing and Zian shuddered, and a chill suddenly appeared in their hearts. They instinctively felt that something bad was about to happen. Then, the middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes. His greenish-white eyes were glowing. When he saw the girls who suddenly appeared in the shop, he couldn't help but grin and squint his eyes. His eyes were already very small, and when he squinted, they were almost invisible. He even used his malicious gaze to look at the girls wantonly. When his gaze landed on Yin Nuoxing, he didn't even stop for a second before he muttered, "Mediocre." Then, his gaze landed on Zian and the others. His eyes were almost glowing. Being stared at like this, the girls' expressions were a little unnatural. Yin Nuoxing's forehead was also bursting with blue veins. Fortunately, he wasn't a girl. Otherwise, with this sentence, he would have a reason to tear down the shop while he was at it. Yin Nuoxing took a step forward and blocked Zian and the others behind her. She took a deep breath and tried her best to put on a smile on her face. She said rather politely, "Mr. Meow, I heard that you have colored glass spiritual sand in your hands. Would you be willing to exchange it with me?" Bah, which big mouth is barking again? When the middle-aged man heard this, he spat and spit flew in the air. Then, he impatiently shook his hand. His eyes wanted to look through Yin Nuoxing and behind him. He cursed as he clamped his legs on the table and laughed sinisterly. "That's right, I have colored glass spiritual sand. I took it from a group of people in an ancient ruin. It could be said that I used my life to exchange for it. Do you understand? Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. She took a deep breath and said, colored glass spiritual sand is comparable to a 12th level material. Although it isn't listed as exclusive to the gods, it's still a rare forging treasure. Mr. Meow is an alchemy grandmaster. It's useless for you to have such a treasure. Why don't you exchange it with me? I have 2 sun essence demonic fruits here. It's the main ingredient of a high-grade saint pill. I'm sure Mr. Meow knows its value better than I do. Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly and flipped over her hand, taking out 2 fist-sized fruits. These 2 fruits emitted a sunlight that was as bright as the sun, illuminating the dark shop until it was extremely dazzling. Even some of the shredded paper on the ground started to burn silently, as if Yin Nuoxing was holding 2 suns in his hands, not 2 fruits. Yishi was also stunned. She quickly looked at Xian and asked, where did Brother Nuo get these sun essence demonic fruits? Xian covered Mei Mao and said softly, last time when I went to the Sun Moon Institute, I saw a sun moon spring. These were born in the spring, but one was ice and the other fire. Even if the people of the Sun Moon Institute knew about it, they wouldn't dare to pick it. We got lucky. When the sun essence demonic fruits appeared, the middle-aged man's lewd eyes shrank. He looked at the 2 suns with a serious expression, but this seriousness disappeared in a flash. Soon after, he became frivolous again and laughed. Little girl, these sun essence demonic fruits are not bad, but colored glass spiritual sand is a 12th level treasure. Although I'm not a blacksmith, I have many blacksmith friends. They know the value of colored glass spiritual sand better than I do. Why don't I ask them to appraise it? The corner of Yin Nuoxing's eyes twitched. Although the seriousness in the middle-aged man's eyes disappeared quickly, it couldn't escape his evil spirit eye. Although he couldn't see through the thoughts of an underworld king expert, how could he not know what this guy meant? If you want to ask for a price, just say it. Taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing didn't put the 2 fruits away. He said indifferently, then what price does Mr. Meow plan to pay? The sunlight of this sun essence demonic fruit hasn't dissipated yet. It's obvious that it's been less than half a year since it was born. It must have been picked. Then I presume that you've also picked the other half of the moonspring flower? The middle-aged man grinned. Yin Nuoxing's expression turned serious. This guy was worthy of being a high immortal rank alchemist. The sun essence demonic fruit and the moonspring flower were both born together. Those who had one would naturally be able to obtain the other. Both of them contain the splendor of the sun essence demonic fruit and the moonspring flower. But this splendor would automatically return to the fruit after half a year. 2 stalks of moonspring flower and the pill formula for the sun moon fortune pill. I'll give you the 50 kilograms of colored glazed spirit sand. Without waiting for Yin Nuoxing to speak, the middle-aged man grinned and licked his lips. His pair of eyes looked behind Yin Nuoxing again. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and said, old Mr. Meow must be joking. I picked the sun moon essence demonic fruit by accident. I'm not an alchemist, so I won't collect pill formulas. Moreover, although the pill formula for the sun moon fortune pill is a high saint rank pill, it can't even be compared to some low peerless rank pill formulas. With this pill formula, I could buy a few blocks of colored glazed spirit sand. Hearing this, the middle-aged man grinned and laughed sinisterly. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, causing Yin Nuoxing and the others to shudder. Why was this guy like a pervert? Soon after, they heard the former laugh sinisterly. Of course, that was just a casual remark. So, Yin Nuoxing raised her eyebrows. She felt that things weren't that simple. The middle-aged man chuckled and pointed behind Yin Nuoxing. With a lewd smile, he said, leave those little beauties behind and give me a sun essence demonic fruit and a lunar spring flower. Maybe I'll consider it. Hearing this, the tense smile on Yin Nuoxing's face instantly turned gloomy. She took a light breath and said calmly, old Mr. Meow, please don't joke around. You're an underworld king expert. Why do you have to tease us juniors? Crack! The chair that was gently swaying suddenly stopped. The middle-aged man raised his head, and the smile on his face faded. However, the green light in his eyes didn't shrink. Instead, it became stronger. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others with a smile that wasn't a smile. The open door closed with a bang, and the temperature in the surroundings rose silently. That scorching aura pressed down on Yin Nuoxing and the others. Before it came into contact with them, Feng Er's jade-like hands trembled slightly, and the flaming aura automatically avoided them. Old Mr. Meow, I'm seriously discussing with you. During this period of time, I urgently need the colored glazed spirit sand. I hope that you can make an exception. As long as the price is suitable, I won't refuse. Yin Nuoxing's slightly tanned face still had a smile. Seeing that he was still suppressing the irritation in his heart, Xian couldn't help but smile. She gently poked his back with her jade-like hands, causing another vein on Yin Nuoxing's forehead to pop out. He couldn't help but transmit his voice, "Don't poke me. I'm afraid that I'll hit you if I can't hold it in." Heh, I didn't expect that these little girls of yours would have some foundation. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing and the others weren't affected by his aura, the middle-aged man was also a little surprised. Soon after, he laughed sinisterly and said, "However, I'm also very seriously talking to you. Leave the little girls behind you behind. Of course, you can also stay behind. I think you're quite interesting." Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. The smile on his face completely disappeared, and his voice couldn't help but become louder. "Old Mr. Meow, if you still have such an idea, don't blame me for doing something rude. You? Although this old man's talent in alchemy is mediocre, it's not up to a little junior like you to talk to me like this." Hearing Yin Nuoxing's words, a mocking smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face as he sneered. "Let me pinch my fingers and calculate. The white thing in your head might have been dug into a hole by Wong Kai next door. Did he bury something in there?" Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and suddenly turned around. He waved his hand and was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He brought the few girls and rushed towards the door. "It's too late for you to leave now." Seeing Yin Nuoxing's actions and hearing those words, a murderous aura flashed across the middle-aged man's face. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground, and his body rushed towards Yin Nuoxing like lightning. At the same time his body moved, a rolling heat wave quickly spread in the shop. Wisps of flames spread out from the ground and suddenly sealed the door. Seeing the wall of fire standing in front of him, Yin Nuoxing's face didn't change. He extended his hand and was about to push the door open. "You're courting death." Seeing that Yin Nuoxing was about to touch the wall of fire, the middle-aged man couldn't help but sneer. His flaming hand suddenly slapped out and enveloped the entire passageway. The scarlet flaming palm burned half of the wall and slapped towards Yin Nuoxing and the others from all directions. "Xiaoxi," Yin Nuoxing called out indifferently, after which the person beside him suddenly flashed. He didn't look behind him, and his white-gloved hand gently touched the wall of fire. That gentle action caused the wall of fire to disappear without a trace the moment it touched it, after which that delicate hand pushed the door open and the sunlight from outside shone in once again. Bang! At the same time, an energy explosion suddenly sounded from behind them. Surging waves of air blew the roof of the shop away. The passageway also disappeared in an instant. Sunlight poured down from above. Seeing this scene, Yin Nuoxing and the rest also gently turned around. "Oomph, you old bastard. I gave you a lot of face and you didn't want it. You're just a little nether king. Do you think you can overturn the heavens?" In the shop, the wooden cabinets were tilted left and right. The walls had collapsed, and the medicinal herbs and pills that were placed on the shelves rolled to the side. Papers fluttered in the air, and the scene was like an earthquake. The middle-aged man was lying on the ground with a trace of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. Yishi's small foot was stepping on his chest as she looked down at him disdainfully. The aura of death around her formed a small whirlwind. The middle-aged man's eyes widened, and he lowered his head with difficulty to look at Yishi, who had a cold and arrogant expression on her face. Just now, he hadn't reacted. In his mind, he should have been the one to slap them unconscious. Why did this happen? And this aura. You're a Nether King expert. The middle-aged man coughed out a mouthful of blood. The lustful light in his eyes finally disappeared and was replaced by a faint trace of fear. However, he quickly calmed down and roared, "I'm an immortal great alchemist. If you kill me, the Morning Pill's sacred hall won't let you off. There won't be a place for you in the Origin Tripod City. You really don't know what's good for you. Your life is in the hands of others, and you still have the time to think about other things." Yishi sneered and stomped on the middle-aged man's chest. With this stomp, Yin Nuoxing heard the crisp sound of bones breaking. The middle-aged man also spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was mixed with some fragments of his internal organs. This casual stomp had seriously injured him. Seeing the high and mighty Nether King expert being so casually subdued by Yi Shi, Yin Nuoxing fell into deep thought. Usually, he only faced God Emperor experts. In fact, he didn't really understand people at this level. He thought that even if a Nether King expert couldn't defeat a God Emperor expert, he could at least resist for a short period of time. He didn't expect that he would be killed so quickly. As for why the middle-aged man shouted Nether King, Yin Nuoxing shrugged. He felt that Yi Shi should have shown mercy. "Little Shi, let's go. Don't waste time here." Yin Nuoxing called out softly. Yi Shi nodded and lifted her foot to kick the middle-aged man away. The middle-aged man was sent flying and crashed into the wall. He spat out another mouthful of blood. A trace of hatred flashed in his eyes as he stared at the people walking out of the shop. It was as if he wanted to engrave their faces in his mind. Chapter 764. Ignoring the middle-aged man's vicious gaze, Yin Nuoxing indifferently glanced at him before leading his men out of the store. He originally did not want to make a move, but this fellow's thoughts were not right. Furthermore, he had set his sights on the girls behind him. It was already a miracle that he was able to hold back his anger. If he were to make a move, it would not be as simple as destroying a store. That could easily destroy a city or a fortress. Casually tossing a spatial ring in her hand, Yishi fiddled with it for a while before casually breaking the spiritual seal on it. She then tossed it to Yin Nuoxing. "Here's his spatial storage ring. See if it's inside." Yin Nuoxing nodded his head. His spiritual strength sunk into it. After probing for a moment, he discovered a jade box that was huddled in a corner, emitting a glass-like glow. He took it out and gently opened it. The brilliant glow that shone out caused him to gently nod his head. However, his face twitched slightly before he carelessly closed it again. He scolded, "This old fellow, 50 kilograms? I estimate that there's only 40 kilograms here. It's only enough to make some leftovers." Soon after, he sighed and bitterly smiled. What's wrong with this world? Can't they just do business properly? Why do they have to make a move? Sigh. Yishi shrugged her shoulders and said, "A monster king, a godchild, a demigod stage, a demon stage, and a me whose strength he can't see through. Before I reveal my identity, he naturally won't care. After all, that old man is still a Nether King expert. He naturally has his own arrogance and dirty thoughts." Yishi jumped into Yin Nuoxing's embrace, swinging her slender legs as she casually said, "Experts naturally have their own arrogance. If Brother Nuoxing wants the other party to talk to you seriously, then show him an identity or strength worthy of the other party's respect. This is the rule of this world. Only experts have the right to speak." "All right, then let's go take the test to become an alchemist. I don't want to reveal my identity as the Nine Deities Temple. It's too frightening." Yin Nuoxing hugged her gently and said helplessly, "Big Brother Nuo, if you reveal your identity as a member of Nine Deities Hall, the entire Origin Cauldron City will treat you as a guest," Yishi added. "That's even worse." Casually strolling through the streets, Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment before walking into a shop. She also inquired about the alchemist factions in Origin Cauldron City. Second to none is the dazzling fire palace of the Fire God Shrine, followed by the Morning Pill Sacred Hall, and then the Sacred Fire Guild. When the boss mentioned it, he couldn't help but feel a little yearning. That flickering expression of worship made Yin Nuoxing and the others feel a little funny, and also a little emotional. It seemed that the status of an alchemist was indeed not low. In this city where alchemy was common, the alchemist's great power was even more admirable. Recalling the middle-aged man's mention of the Morning Pill Sacred Hall, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but ask, how strong are the Morning Pill's Sacred Hall? Very strong. These three factions have always occupied the top three positions in Origin Cauldron City. Needless to say, the Dazzling Fire Palace is one of the top three factions. Neither the Morning Pill's Sacred Hall nor the Sacred Fire Guild dares to provoke them. These two factions have always had private disputes, but the Sacred Fire Guild has never won against the Morning Pill's Sacred Hall. The boss chuckled and said, "It is said that the Morning Pill's Sacred Hall has a high-grade Saint Alchemist. His alchemy efficiency alone is comparable to half of the Sacred Fire Guild's alchemists." The boss said respectfully, "I am elite alchemist. In Origin Cauldron City, 80% of the people are like me, insignificant alchemists. Don't think that elite alchemists are very famous in other cities. In Origin Cauldron City, elite alchemists are nothing in front of those big shots." After chatting for a while, Yin Nuoxing and the others walked out of the shop. Thinking about the location of the Sacred Fire Guild that they had just inquired about, they walked slowly along a route and turned slowly through a few long streets. It was currently noon, but the streets were still bustling with activity. Many medicinal herbs were displayed on the roadside stalls. There were 100-year-old, 1,000-year-old, and even 10,000-year-old medicinal herbs. They were placed all over the place like cabbages. Some medicinal herbs that were considered precious in the outside world were rarely bought. Only the truly rare and unique treasures would be stored in high-grade jade boxes. After walking around for a long time and asking people along the way, they walked along the walls as if they were walking through a maze for a quarter of an hour. Only then did they slowly come to a stop and raise their heads to look at the majestic building that had suddenly appeared in front of them. The highest point of the palace was like a furnace. For huge cauldrons were placed at the four corners of the palace, bobbing up and down at the top of the palace. If one looked carefully, they would discover that the space around the cauldrons was slowly fluctuating as they bobbed up and down. One could even hear the sound of heavy weight rubbing against the space. At the top of the palace, on a black plaque, for golden words were emitting a faint light. They appeared very imposing, as if they wanted to engrave these four words in the minds of those who saw them for the first time. Sacred Fire Guild. Speaking of which, since it's called Sacred Fire, there should be that thing inside, right? That thing. Yin Nuoxing licked her lips and chuckled. I don't know whether there is or not. I'm just reminding you. With your current situation, even if you refine a divine flame that is ranked lower than 30, it probably won't cause any changes to the divine physique. Before Yishi and the others could respond, Ziya's quiet voice entered their minds. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smile bitterly. How could a divine flame that was ranked 30th be so easy to find? Not to mention that they had searched the entire God's realm. At least they had seen the treasure map. So far, they had only found the two divine flames that were ranked higher in the Sourcepeak region from the complicated symbols. Now, they were still working hard on one of them. I'm just saying. Besides, divine flames aren't very useful to me. Divine weapons can also improve my physique. After repairing the Sword of Sand and absorbing it, it will probably be close to maturity. After that, it will be a matter of realm. Yin Nuoxing smiled indifferently. Z shrugged. She was just reminding him. Besides, what he said was indeed the truth. Divine flames weren't as useful to him as the others. Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and looked at the empty space. She realized that most of the people who passed by this palace would stop for a while and look at the palace with envy or respect. Then they would also look at her and the girls beside her. A hint of surprise flashed past their eyes. Moreover, they seemed to have absorbed 80% of the gazes that were directed at the Sacred Fire Guild. With a dry cough, Yin Nuoxing helplessly reached out to hold Ziyan and Feng Er's hands. Then, she glanced at Little Bing Er and Yi Shi. Then, she strode toward the Sacred Fire Guild. As they walked up the stairs and approached the door, two young men who seemed to have been watching them for a long time stepped forward and extended their hands to stop them. They smiled faintly and said, "Fairies, this is the territory of the Sacred Fire Guild. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. Is there anything we can help you with?" Yin Nuoxing blinked her bright eyes and glanced at the badges on their chests. The background of the badges was a red sea of fire. A big word, elite, was engraved in the middle. There were 3 bright stars in the triangular position. High-level elite apothecary. Yin Nuashing murmured in her heart. Apothecaries and alchemists were of the same rank. Their badges were different, but they were mostly the same. However, she was a little surprised that an elite apothecary was sent to guard the door. It seemed to be just like what the boss said. A elite apothecary didn't seem to be much here. After glancing at them for a while, Yin Nuashing said softly, I heard that the Sacred Fire Guild can provide an apothecary rank assessment for ordinary people. I want to take a look and test my own rank. So you want to take a rank assessment? Fairy, do you have your previous rank badge? If you do, we can arrange it for you. The 2 young men said with a smile. They didn't dare to be too casual with their gazes. Those who could move around in Yuanding City had a high status. If they weren't strong enough to be unscrupulous, they wouldn't dare to look around casually. Yin Nuashing shook her head. Just as she was about to say something, she paused. She then took out 2 jade bottles from her ring and placed them in the hands of the 2 young men. She said, No, we have never done this before. You can arrange it for us. She looked suspiciously at the jade bottle in her hand. Her soul strength entered it casually. Soon after, the young man's body suddenly stiffened. A look of horror quickly surged on his face, but he quickly hid it. He glanced at the person beside him and found that his expression had also trembled slightly. He couldn't help looking at Yin Nuashing and the others with a hint of respect. Can we go in now? Yin Nuashing asked softly with a smile. The 2 young men trembled and exchanged glances. Soon after, one of them hurriedly cupped his hands towards Yin Nuashing and said, Fairy, this way, please. We'll make the arrangements for you. After speaking, she glanced at the young man who didn't have time to speak. Under his jealous gaze, she led Yin Nuashing and the others through the door behind her. After walking through a spacious passageway, they arrived at a large hall. A rich medicinal fragrance lingered in the hall. Just a whiff of it was enough to clear away the fatigue of traveling day and night, making one feel refreshed. There weren't many people in the hall. Only a few people were busy behind their tables. Occasionally, someone would appear, but they would just hurriedly pass by and go somewhere else. It wasn't until a series of light footsteps rang out that those people raised their heads and looked towards the passageway in front of them. When they saw the young man and Yin Nuashing walking in, a trace of doubt flashed across their eyes. This was especially so when they saw the young man's rather solemn expression, which made them somewhat bewildered. After settling down, Yin Nuashing and the others for a while, the young man walked in front of a person and said, Senior brother, help me get 2 assessment tokens. The one with no restrictions is the one that can be tested from the beginning all the way up. The senior brother was stunned. He put down the pen in his hand and took out 2 black tokens from his space storage tool. He glanced at the quiet Yin Nuashing and the others. Her beautiful appearance and ethereal temperament made him swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Before the young man took the 2 tokens, he suddenly stretched out his hand and hooked it around his neck. He smiled and said, Fandong, you're really something. You were punished to guard the door for 3 days, but you still managed to hook up with such beautiful fairies. The young man called Fandong smiled bitterly. After struggling for a while, he said bitterly, Hook up my ass. I brought them here to take the alchemist assessment. They've never taken the assessment before, but if nothing unexpected happens, they're at least at the beginning of the immortal grade. Immortal grade? They look like they're only in their late 20s, and they don't have the lethargy of those elders. You're not joking, right? The senior brother's eyebrows twitched slightly, and he suddenly said very seriously, What's the benefit of lying to you? Fandong rolled his eyes and took out the jade bottles that Yin Nuashing had just handed to him. He said, You'll know when you see it for yourself. The senior brother took the 2 jade bottles suspiciously. Then he suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air and swallowed his saliva. However, he quickly calmed down and said, Although we can't rule out the possibility that they didn't refine it themselves, they should have a very strong background since they can take out immortal grade pills so casually. Fandong nodded and muttered for a while. Then, he took the 2 black tokens and returned to Yin Nuashing and the others. While they were talking, Yin Nuashing and Xian were also cramming at the last minute. In fact, they didn't have much experience in alchemy, but why were they so confident? It all started from that time, back then, when they met the Monarch Mountain Empress and saw the statues of Great Emperor Color Glaze and the others. The Soul Saber Great Emperor was an alchemist. When Yin Nuashing was cultivating at that time, she inadvertently received some teachings from him. Later, when she met the real person, he also forcibly imparted knowledge to her. Kid, you have 4 kinds of divine flames. It's simply a waste if you don't learn alchemy. You have to learn it no matter what. At that time, the Soul Saber Great Emperor directly hung Yin Nuashing up and preached to her. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And at that time, the Empress and the others also agreed very much. She had no choice but to learn. However, the learning time wasn't too long. During that time, there were all kinds of things, but the Soul Saber Great Emperor imparted a lot of his own alchemy experience to Yin Nuashing. He also let Yin Nuashing watch him refine pills from the side. It could be considered a serious learning experience. As for how much Yin Nuashing accepted, it was hard to say. She should have at least half a bucket of knowledge. After all, she boasted that she had no problem learning anything. Therefore, at this time, Yin Nuashing was also imparting this half a bucket of experience to Xian. As for why she was dragged in, besides her own curiosity, it was more because of her physique. Yin Nuashing smiled and rubbed Xian's head. When she saw Fan Dong walking over, she whispered a few words to him. The 5-element constitution has the power of creation. This kind of technical work that is similar to creation is very suitable for you. Chapter 765. Everyone, please come with me. Fan Dong handed 2 black tokens to Yin Nuashing and Xian. Then, he gestured to them and smiled. The black token has the right to take an unlimited test. It's mainly for alchemists who have great strength but have never taken a test before. In fact, if you have the ability, you can directly take the test at the level you think you can reach. There's no need to take multiple tests, but speaking up to here, Fan Dong looked back at Yin Nuashing and the others. The latter nodded helplessly and said, "We don't know what level we can reach, so we need to take the test all the way." Fan Dong nodded and then muttered in his heart, "If the Immortal Grade pill was refined by you, you can take the Immortal Grade test directly." After walking for a while, they stopped in front of a door. Outside the door, there were 2 young men. They had their hands behind their backs, and their backs were as straight as a spear. They were waiting with their eyes closed. Yin Nuashing's gaze swept across the 2 young men. Her heart froze. These 2 young men were both God's Son level experts. He didn't lead Yin Nuashing and the others directly into the door. Instead, he walked towards a small door on the wall. He gently pushed it open and walked in. Behind the small door was a very ordinary room. There was only a counter and a wooden cabinet inside. There were rows of head-sized crystal balls on the cabinet. They were flowing with a faint blue and white light. Fan Dong took out a scroll from the counter and spread it open. He smiled at Yin Nuashing and said, "Use the crystal ball on the side to measure your age and say your name." Yin Nuashing and Xian looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. This was the procedure of others, so there was nothing to dispute. Yusin. It had been a long time since she used an alias. Yin Nuashing coughed and casually picked up a brighter crystal ball from the counter. She held it in her hands. The blue and white light in the crystal ball circulated for a while. It seemed to rush into Yin Nuashing's body. Then, it quickly retreated and condensed in the middle of the crystal ball, slowly changing into a number. UXIN, age 10, 14. Fan Dong lowered his head and wrote down his name. When he looked up and saw the number on the crystal ball, he was so shocked that his pen fell to the ground. His mouth opened so wide that a pear could be stuffed in. What kind of age is this? My conservative estimate is at least 35. Yin Nuashing wrinkled her nose and looked at the astonished Fan Dong. She casually revealed her age and asked, This is also relative. The age measured is not the actual age." Fan Dong scratched his head awkwardly. He coughed dryly and said, "We cultivators have a very long lifespan. Every time we cultivate, it's almost like we're reborn. However, the age of our bones will be firmly engraved in our bones. That's our actual age. However, this crystal ball measures the age of a cultivator. For example, at our level, our current state is equivalent to our age. Oh, Yin Nuashing replied. He put down the crystal ball in his hand in disbelief and took out another one to take a look. In the end, it still showed 14. He didn't know if he was too young or too inexperienced. Yin E. Xian also thought of an alias. The dazzling fire palace was here. They didn't want to be caught by the people of the fire god shrine and then worship them. However, this name made Yin Nuashing blush. She silently glanced at Xian. This name had a deep meaning. Xian took out a crystal ball, and Fandong also recorded it. Yin E, age 10, 16. Seeing this age, Fandong's cheeks twitched for a while. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Where did this monster come from? He estimated that she was in her 20s when he measured her. In the end, Yin Nuashing and Xian were so young that they were almost as young as they were sensible. Especially that Yin E. She was much stronger than him. Feng Er and Little Bing Er also curiously held a crystal ball and looked at it attentively for a while. 10 years old and 1 year old. Well, the two of you are young enough. Seeing the age displayed on the crystal ball, Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. In this group of people, one was younger than the other. Yishi also picked up the crystal ball and quickly put it down after a glance. She blushed slightly and turned her head. Then, she saw Yin Nuashing looking at her with a sinister smile and said, "Little she is 20 years old." Yishi blushed and rolled her eyes at him. She smiled bitterly. She clearly looked the youngest, but in the end, she was the oldest. After all, she was a god emperor powerhouse and had actually lived for more than 100,000 years. Little Xin is 2 years younger than me. Xian smiled and rubbed Yin Nuashing's head. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. In terms of actual age, Xian was 7 or 8 years younger than her. She didn't expect that when the relative age of cultivators was revealed, he would be younger than her. After the registration, Fandong led the few people out. Then, he walked to the two young men, cupped his hands, and said, "Senior brother, the assessment inside hasn't started yet, right?" "Haha, not yet, but it will start soon. You were punished to guard the door, but you still brought new people. These young ladies are not bad." The senior brother opened his eyes and glanced at Yin Nuashing and the others. He was stunned and inexplicably felt his heart palpitate when he looked at them. With his strength, he was surprised that he had such a feeling. Fandong smiled bitterly and went through the handover procedure with the senior brother. Then, he took the 2 black tokens from Yin Nuashing and Xian, fiddled with them, and returned them. Then, he smiled at Feng Er and said, "Fairies, please wait here for a moment. Only those who are taking the assessment can enter." Yin Nuashing and Xian took the tokens, put them away casually, and nodded with a smile. "Good luck." Feng Er smiled and cheered them on. Yin Nuashing also smiled and cupped her hands to Fandong and the others. Then, she walked through the door with Xian. After entering the door, the bright lights illuminated a spacious platform. In front of them, there were 3 doors of different colors. From left to right, they were red, blue, and black. A huge crystal hung from the ceiling, illuminating the place. After raising the token and looking at it for a while, Yin Nuashing pulled Xian to the black door and stuck the token on it. The black door made a slight sound, and then slowly opened from the middle. After the two walked in, the door closed suddenly. In the hall behind the black door, there were quite a number of people clustered around. The atmosphere was somewhat cheerful, and whispers could be heard. When Yin Nuashing and Yin Ruashing walked in, those people's gazes slowly turned around. Those eyes that contained a bright light glanced at the two of them, and then many people were stunned. Yin Nuashing could not be more familiar with that gaze. Yin Nuashing was also sizing up these people. His gaze vaguely swept across these people's chests. He was somewhat surprised to find that this group of people basically did not have the alchemist badge. Many of them even appeared to be very young. They did not look much older than them. Clearly, for some reason, they had not participated in the alchemist assessment. In front of the crowd, Yin Nuashing also found 3 old men. Their eyebrows were almost falling off. On their chests, there was a badge with 3 god grade stars, which was the high god grade. The old man in the middle was actually wearing a divine grade beginner badge. He pricked up his ears and listened for a while. Only then did he know that these 3 old men were the elders of the Sacred Fire Guild. The 3 doors where they were at were used for outsiders to assess. Compared to the dazzling Fire Palace and the Morning Pill Holy Hall, the Sacred Fire Guild was very convenient in this aspect. Furthermore, if they found someone with extremely high talent, they would even be accepted into the Sacred Fire Guild as an exception. The 3 old men were still chatting. The divine grade alchemist swept his eyes across the hall and saw the people he didn't see just now. He couldn't help but stare at the 2 young girls who came in without him knowing. He smiled faintly and said, "Haha, 2 little girls. Are you also here to take the alchemist assessment?" Yun Nuoxing, who was looking at the hall out of boredom, was slightly stunned when she heard the divine grade old man's words. She then nodded and cupped her hands at the 3 of them. Seeing Yun Nuoxing nod, the divine grade old man was a little surprised. He couldn't help but ask, "Little girl, what's the age on your crystal ball?" "I'm 14, and she's 16. Although Yun Nuoxing didn't know why the divine grade alchemist would ask these questions that had already been registered, she still answered truthfully. Yun Nuoxing's reply caused the old man to be stunned for a moment. Even the 2 old men beside him let out a surprised cry. The people in the hall also turned their gazes in shock and stared at Yun Nuoxing and Yun Nuoxing with strange gazes. All sorts of emotions flashed past their eyes, and almost all of them were puzzled. The divine grade alchemist smiled and didn't say anything else. However, the old man beside him smiled and said, "Old Bai, your disciple is now close to the advanced supreme grade, right?" The divine grade alchemist pondered for a while and sighed. "That kid is very talented. He's estimated to have reached the advanced supreme grade at the age of 20. Perhaps he'll be able to advance to the immortal grade in another 2 years. What's wrong?" Nothing. I'm just asking." The old man beside him chuckled. His old eyes kept glancing at Yun Nuoxing and Xian. No one knew what he was thinking. Yun Nuoxing and Xian felt uncomfortable when they were glanced at by the old man, but they were relatively calm. The other immortal grade old man was also glancing at the 2 of them. After a while, he exclaimed in surprise, causing the other 2 to turn their heads. The immortal grade old man couldn't help but ask, "Yilin, what are you surprised about?" The old man, called Yilin, glanced at him, stroked his beard, and said, "I can't see the spiritual realm of these 2 little girls. Perhaps there will be a good show today. Old Bai, what do you think?" Yilin looked at the old man in the middle and asked, Let's see." Old Bai chuckled and didn't say anything else. The immortal grade old man rolled his eyes. Time passed slowly for a while. Yun Nuoxing and Xian stood in the corner and didn't go up to talk to anyone. The others stared at them with interest. In the boring wait, 2 beauties appeared, which was pleasing to the eyes. The 2 of them didn't bother to pay attention to anything and waited quietly. The black door opened once or twice, and another 2 or 3 people came in. These 2 or 3 people also stood by the side. Their eyes revealed some vicissitudes of life, but they looked very young. Similarly, there were no badges hanging on their chests. After waiting for a while, the divine grade alchemist slowly stood up and waved his hand. Then he smiled and said, "Time's up. Let's begin." When the crowd heard the voice, they slowly turned their eyes and looked at the 3 people at the front. Their eyes were filled with seriousness. Some people even took a deep breath, as if they were forcing themselves to be alert. Hearing this, Yilin didn't say anything else. He stood up and looked at the crowd below. Tilting his head, his old hand slipped out of his sleeve and pointed at the right side of the hall. There were rooms there. Each person has a single room. How should I say it? That's your examination room. Oh, there are a lot of herbs in each room. When you enter, don't touch them. There's a crystal ball on the table that's used to measure the strength of your soul. It will test your soul more comprehensively and match you with a certain difficulty. Then, you'll be tested 1 level at a time. There's no time limit. When you fail 3 times in a level, it will be considered over. Your level will be fixed at the level above. The initial level of the assessment won't be very high, so you don't have to worry about failing the first assessment. Don't worry and go ahead. If your talent reaches the standard of our Sacred Fire Guild, the guild's doors will be open for you. Yilin's voice wasn't hoarse. Instead, it was a little forceful, causing the people below to look at each other. Their eyes were filled with a strong sense of motivation. The last rule was very attractive to many people, and a portion of the people from the Sacred Fire Guild had also entered through this method. Yilin's gaze swept across the crowd. His gaze paused on Yin Nuashing and Xian for a while. When he saw that the two of them were laughing and talking about something, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes and curl his lips into an inexplicable smile. After a while, Yilin clapped his hands and shifted his gaze away from Yin Nuashing. He smiled and said, "Okay, let's begin. Don't fail too much." As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd in the hall uniformly walked towards the room on the right. Before entering, some people even cheered each other on. Good luck. Yin Nuashing and Xian found 2 adjacent rooms. They looked at each other and smiled. Then, they opened the door and walked in. Chapter 766. After the hall became empty, Yilin finally sat down unhurriedly. He glanced at Senior Bai, who seemed to be in a good mood, and heard Senior Bai humming a song from who knows how many years ago. Yilin could not help but roll his eyes and casually said, "You seem to be in a good mood?" "Haha, it has already begun." Senior White chuckled as he stroked his beard. A glint flashed across his aged eyes as he looked at the tightly shut doors. The originally black doors were now emitting several different colors. Moreover, the soul pressure emitted from the doors that were darker in color was even more powerful. 25 people, 3 of them have reached the divine level soul. 2 of them are divine sons and divine venerables. Only the little girl is at the demon level. Moreover, she is only at the 2nd seal of the demon level. Lao Bai chuckled, causing Yilin and the God Great Elder to be stunned. The 2nd seal of the demon level already has a divine level soul. Let's continue to observe, Yilin said as he took a sip of tea from the teacup on the table beside him. After the door was closed, the dark room slowly became bright. Yin Nuashing turned around and looked around. The room was not very big. It was only about 6 meters long and wide. On the side of the door, there was a medicine cabinet made of high-quality jade. Not a single trace of medicine fragrance leaked out. It was sealed very well. In the center of the room, there was a small stone table. On the stone table, there was a 2-meter-tall medicine cauldron and a 2-meter-tall alchemy cauldron. Both of them were made of high-quality materials. When used to refine pills, they could increase the flame and nourish the pills. As for the differences between the medicine cauldron and the alchemy cauldron, there was actually no difference. The 2 types of tools depended on which one was more convenient to use. There were more than 2 types of tools for refining pills. It was just that there were more people using these 2 types of tools. Yin Nuashing glanced at the 2 alchemy cauldrons and then turned to the side of the stone table. There was a table there. On the table, there was a crystal ball the size of a head. This should be the crystal ball that Yilin had mentioned just now to measure the soul strength. Buzz! Walking to the side of the table, Yin Nuashing stretched out his hand and gently touched the crystal ball. Immediately, a deep multicolored light blossomed from within, illuminating the entire room. The intensity of the light was so strong that Yin Nuashing could only temporarily close his eyes. At the same time, the power of his soul suddenly surged when he touched the crystal ball. It drilled out from his palm and stuck to the crystal ball, causing him to not dare to let go for a moment. After a long while, when he felt that his soul had gradually calmed down, he released his palm and opened his eyes. The transparent crystal ball was now rendered to look like a piece of colored glass. The crystal ball was silent for a moment, and the light inside flickered slightly. After a moment, a paragraph of text was projected out, and it was reflected in the air. The text was a prescription, and its level and information were completely projected in the air. Premium high grade. It's tested that my soul is at the God level, and it's set at premium high grade. It seems like the starting point isn't high. Yin Nuashing looked at it seriously. This prescription was a kind of elixir called the Berserk Elixir. The effect of this Berserk Elixir would allow the user to explode with all the power in his body for a short period of time. However, after the effect of the elixir was over, the user would enter a period of weakness due to the excessive outburst of aura. This kind of elixir could be considered as a top-grade elixir among the premium high-grade elixirs. For those who often refine elixirs, the difficulty might not be very high. However, Yinuashing was just a newbie. I wonder how the girl is, muttering in his heart. Yinuashing took a deep breath for a moment. In this room, there wasn't a dragon vein, nor was there an abundance of fire element. If he wanted to refine elixirs, he could only use his own fire element. This was also the first condition for the alchemist examination. Without the fire element, although he could refine elixirs, he definitely couldn't be called an alchemist. The girl's fire origin hasn't been retrieved. I wonder if the weak flames in the 5 elements energy are enough. While his mind was still wandering, Yinuashing walked to the medicine cabinet at the side and took out the herbs needed to refine the Berserk Elixir. Furthermore, he took out 2 portions at once. He was also worried that this first attempt would be wasted. After all, I'm just a newbie. Although Brother Soul Blade has taught me for a period of time, I'm still inexperienced. I hope that I can use these 2 practices to make up for the gap a little. After arranging the herbs and taking out a jade bottle of good quality, Yinuashing smiled bitterly in his heart. Which alchemist grandmaster hadn't been immersed in this field for dozens of years and spent countless efforts? Like the 2 of them, who felt like they were here to play on a whim, it was impossible to make up for the gap between them, no matter how talented they were. My soul power is definitely sufficient. Then let's go all out. Yinuashing's gaze swept past those medicinal ingredients. Then he quietly stared at the prescription. He slowly focused his mind. With his god-level soul's power and the help of the soul-suppressing lamp, he could smash out this high-quality, high-grade elixir. Moreover, he also had the help of the divine flame. Yinuashing repeatedly read the prescription in his mind 7 or 8 times. With a wave of his hand, the purple night flame in his body awakened and surged through his body. Then it flowed through his palm and into the cauldron. Boom! A violent, muffled sound rang out. The faint purple flame violently crashed into the cauldron. The cauldron, which seemed to be of good quality, suddenly shook with a clang. Even the cauldron's lid was shaken. At the same time, Yilin, who was outside the room, took another sip of tea. Before he could swallow the tea, the terrifying flame ripple suddenly spread out, and he spat out the tea in his mouth with a pu sound. Lao Bai also turned his head in surprise. When he saw Yinuashing's room, his hand, which was stroking his beard, paused. A bright light flashed through his aged eyes. He said faintly, "Faint purple flame. The fluctuation of the divine flame is like a purple moon in the sky. It has a faint star power. If I'm not wrong, it should be the purple night flame, which is ranked 90th on the divine flame list." The immortal alchemist also had a grave expression on his face. Yilin awkwardly wiped the tea dripping from his chin and fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then he used his soul power to transmit a message to the outside of the hall. His gaze was fixed on the door that was emitting a colorful light. His gaze penetrated the wall and looked inside. When he saw the faint purple flame flying around Yinuashing's body obediently like a spirit, his expression became even more serious. A moment later, the black door was pushed open. An alchemist hurriedly ran in with a scroll in his hand. He ran to Yilin's side. Yilin took the scroll and waved his hand. The alchemist withdrew. Then he unfolded the scroll and saw that it was Yinuashing's information. However, other than the name Yusin, there was nothing else. Yusin? Yilin blankly looked at Lao Bai and the immortal alchemist. The latter's white eyebrows twitched slightly as he shook his head. I've never heard of this name. At least, I've never heard of this name in the Source Cauldron City. I've also never heard of any alchemist in the Source Cauldron City who has a divine flame. This little girl, although she has a divine flame, her technique is very clever, but it's very stiff. She's not used to it, or rather, it's not smooth. Although the process is very smooth, "It can't be said to be very coordinated," said the immortal alchemist. "I don't know who her master is, but her technique is very profound. At least, it's not something we can do at our level. It's a pity that she hasn't familiarized herself with it yet." "It's like a newbie," said Yulin as he nodded. It was not good to judge too early. It was better to continue watching. In the room, Yin Nuoxing did not know that the wall was empty, nor did he know that someone had seen him using the purple night dark flame. He was not in the mood to care about what was happening outside. At this moment, there were more than a dozen clumps of medicinal liquid floating in the medicinal cauldron. He was unhurriedly using his soul to take the medicinal ingredients at the side and throw them into the medicinal cauldron. Under the control of his soul power, the light purple flame transformed into a phoenix that swallowed the medicinal ingredients in one gulp. Then it condensed and extracted the essence of the medicinal ingredients at a frightening speed. Condense. After a long while, when the dozens of medicinal herbs had been completely refined, Yin Nuoxing's hand seal changed. The dozens of medicinal liquids slowly came into contact with one another, fusing into a colorful, fist-sized medicinal liquid. Looking at the changing medicinal liquid, Yin Nuoxing muttered to himself for a while. He left behind a large portion of his soul power to control the purple night dark flame to burn gently. Under the effect of his soul power and the flame, the multicolored medicinal liquid slowly fused into one. Seeing this scene, Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh of relief. Then, he stood up and walked to the side of the cauldron. He took another portion of the berserk pill's medicinal ingredients and started the second cauldron. Strengthening his soul power could speed up the fusion of the medicinal liquid. However, Yin Nuoxing only left behind a portion of his soul power to nourish the medicinal liquid. He did not speed up the fusion of the medicinal liquid. He only allowed it to slowly fuse under the nourishment of his soul power and the flame. Then, he went to start the second cauldron. When he was refining the medicinal essence, he felt that something was wrong. It seemed like there was a problem with his technique. This caused him to want to review it once more so that he would not be flustered in the next test. Outside, Yi Lin and the other two naturally saw this situation. The three of them looked at each other in dismay. Starting the second cauldron was actually quite common. However, wasn't this girl a newbie? They had guessed that she was a newbie. Even if she was taught by a grandmaster, it was impossible for her to start 2 cauldrons on her first try. However, it had already happened. No matter how shocked they were, they could only accept it. Yin Nuoxing, who was immersed in the cauldron, would occasionally open his eyes to look at the situation in the cauldron beside him. After looking for 10 seconds and seeing that nothing was wrong, he continued to immerse himself in refining the medicinal ingredients in the cauldron. This time, the changes in his hand seals were still quite stiff. However, compared to before, it was much better. The entire process also had a sense of natural beauty. If he practiced it a dozen more times, it might become even better. When the second cauldron of medicinal ingredients was finished refining and began to fuse, Yin Nuoxing focused his attention on the cauldron. At this time, the medicinal liquid in the cauldron had already fused and condensed into a perfectly round medicinal pill. It was rolling in the flame. Looking at the color of the medicinal pill, Yin Nuoxing smiled slightly. However, he did not stop. The last step, or perhaps the additional step, was to draw the lines. It was also known as drawing the pill lines. This was similar to a second process. It could increase the quality of the finished medicinal pill. However, if it was a normal pill line, it would not be very useful even if it was drawn. That pill line. How do I draw the pill line? Before he started, Yin Nuoxing's face stiffened. He suddenly forgot how to draw the pill line. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. He quickly recalled the time when he was taught by the Soul Saber Great Emperor, using the heart as the fire, using the fire as the brush. Every stroke is born from the heart. The heart moves at will, and the mind follows the pill. Only in this way can you draw the pill line that is most suitable for each medicinal pill. The voice of the Soul Saber Great Emperor echoed in his mind. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and recalled the medicinal effect of the Berserker pill. Then his hand seals changed slightly. The surging light purple flame trembled slightly and swallowed the medicinal pill again. He is drawing the pill line. Yilin could not help but whisper when he saw this scene. Haha. In order to pursue speed, the current alchemists rarely have the patience to draw the pill line. The time to draw the pill line is enough for some people who have opened 5 cauldrons at once. Only those who pursue the extreme will draw the pill line. Lao Bai smiled and stroked his beard. There seemed to be some gratification in his eyes. As an alchemist, this is how it should be. It took Yin Nuoxing quite a bit of effort to finish drawing the pill veins on the pill. Only then did he relax and let out a laugh. The hand seal dissipated and the light purple flame inside gradually extinguished. With a light flick of his finger, the lid of the medicinal cauldron was shaken. Yin Nuoxing snapped his fingers and a red medicinal pill flew out from the cauldron. After that, it fell into the jade bottle at the side. After keeping it in the jade bottle, Yin Nuoxing ran to the side of the medicinal cauldron. At this time, the medicinal pill inside had been rolling in the flame for an unknown amount of time. This was enough to show that the time needed to draw the pill line was probably longer than the time needed to refine the pill. After drawing the pill line on the second medicinal pill, he extinguished the flame in the medicinal cauldron and kept the medicinal pill. Then, he took the jade bottle of the first medicinal pill and stuck it on the crystal ball. Buzz! When the jade bottle was stuck on the crystal ball, the latter trembled slightly. Very quickly, a line of words was projected into the air. Refinement, low level. Fusion, medium level. Form pill, medium level. Color, medium level. Overall evaluation, medium level. Because the pill line was drawn, the evaluation increased by 1 grade. Berserker pill, high level. After reading this information, Yin Nuoxing wiped the sweat off his face. This assessment was divided into 6 grades. Low level, medium level, high level, and peak level. This was his first time refining a pill, and he almost made it to the medium level. The medium level was just barely enough. After resting for a while, he stuck the second Berserker pill on the crystal ball. Second evaluation, refinement, fusion, form pill, color, high level. Because the pill line was drawn, the evaluation increased by 1 grade. Berserker pill, high level. Not bad. After rubbing his stiff shoulders, Yin Nuoxing smiled. It seemed that drawing the pill line was still an advantage. This was also a death order given to him by the Soul Saber Great Emperor. He was required to draw the pill line every time he refined a pill. Otherwise, his butt would be smacked into 8 pieces. After a moment, the crystal ball shook slightly. The contents of the prescription changed. Yin Nuoxing also became more alert. Then, he looked at the prescription that changed. His face stiffened and he smiled bitterly. It skipped the supreme level and reached the immortal level. Chapter 767. TSK. She went from a novice to a beginner after 2 rounds of refining elixirs. She's almost at the proficient level. She can already use that refining technique very well. Yilin couldn't help but smack his lips. He looked at Yin Nuoxing's room and smiled. The other people in the other rooms are not bad either. The other 2 people with divine level soul have already started to challenge the deity grade. The old man nodded. That child also chose the deity grade prescription. Although her divine level soul and divine flame can make up for some shortcomings, she is too inexperienced. Many situations are more like relying on theory and her own understanding. If it's a familiar prescription, it'll be fine. If it's a strange prescription, it'll be very troublesome for her if it's a difficult one. For example, now, White gently pointed his hand over. Yilin and the old man were also stunned. They had started to take the deity grade test. Did they skip the supreme grade directly? But after a while, Yilin and the old man turned their eyes and looked at Yin Nuoxing's room. When they saw the prescription, they couldn't help but touch their foreheads and smile bitterly. Dragon Soul Elixir, Middle Deity Grade. It's one of the most difficult elixirs in the Middle Deity Grade. It's as difficult as the Low Divine Grade. It's a bit harsh. The old man nodded solemnly. If I were to refine it now, the success rate would not be more than 40%. The difficulty lies in the merging of the elixir. You have to merge the elixir with the dragon soul at the end. Even if you know it, it's difficult to control it. White said softly. Then he smiled and said, but I also hope that she can perform a miracle. Yilin also nodded. Suddenly, he looked to the side and saw the room next to Yin Nuoxing's room. He was stunned. That was Xian's room. At this moment, it was emitting rich, five-colored energy, which made him exclaim again. The power of 5 elements. This kind of energy can be used to refine elixirs. TSK, TSK. These two little girls are not simple. The old man was also surprised. White stroked his beard and looked at Xian's question with his old eyes. He pondered for a while and said, Divine Origin Pill, low-level immortal grade. Divine Sons and Godly Venerables can directly increase their strength by 1 rank. Why are these two children's questions so difficult? The others are comparatively simpler. Even though there are difficulties, they aren't as difficult as they are. That little girl doesn't even have a divine soul. Yilin wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and smiled bitterly. It's already hard enough just because they're newbies. There was a hint of helplessness in Yilin's voice. Lao Bai and the other two also pursed their lips and shrugged their shoulders. The test questions were automatically tested and not set by the 3 of them. Even if they did, it probably wouldn't change much. They wouldn't be biased just because you were a newcomer. Since you came to take the test, you should have the awareness to take the test. But if they succeed, TSK, TSK. Compared to the 14-year-old and 16-year-old immortal grade alchemists, Lao Bai, even your disciple can't compare, right? Yilin laughed again. Yes, indeed. Even if he was given the same conditions, he might not be able to reach this level. Maybe it's because of his talent, but also because of his teacher. Look at the techniques used by the 2 girls. I guess they're from the hands of a great grandmaster. White nodded. He didn't mean to be biased towards his disciple. He admitted it very readily, which made Yilin scratch his head. Should we check a little? They can't be people from their side, right? The old man raised his eyebrows and said, I don't think so. If they really have such talent, they will definitely be great grandmasters in the future. Why let them take the test? Isn't it better to take the test internally? White shook his head. When the old man heard this, he pondered for a while and nodded. While the 3 of them were conversing, a surging dragon roar was suddenly emitted from Yun Nua Star's room. Soon after, an energy glow blossomed to the extreme. That brilliant light caused the expressions of the 3 of them to harden. Oh no, the furnace is going to explode. Yilin shouted. His body shook and almost instantly appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing's door. However, before he could slap the door open, the bright light inside suddenly shrank, and then, boom! A violent explosion suddenly rang out, and a terrifying shockwave erupted, sending Yilin flying. The entire hall shook violently because of this explosion. The magnitude was so great that even the people in the adjacent rooms could feel it. Everyone's expression trembled as they suspiciously turned their gazes towards the source of the tremor. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Yilin had just steadied himself and was about to rush in again, but he saw Lao Bai put a hand on his shoulder and stopped him. Yilin was stunned and wanted to say something, but he saw Lao Bai point at the room. Yilin looked in the direction of Lao Bai's finger and was stunned. In the room, the human-shaped light shadow did not dissipate. However, the energy fluctuation in the medicine cauldron had disappeared. It seemed that when the cauldron exploded, the elixir had also exploded into ashes. However, what shocked Yilin was that Yin Nuoxing was standing there unscathed. She was even scratching her head in distress. There was not even a speck of dust on her body. Yilin opened his mouth and muttered in disbelief. If we were not prepared when the cauldron exploded, we would have been seriously injured by the explosion. Why is this little girl unscathed? Haha, forget it. It's good that she is fine. Why was very calm. He pulled Yilin back to the chair. Who didn't have secrets? If he wanted to know everything, he would be exhausted. Look, the little girl is starting to refine again. She was deep in thought for a while and seemed to have some ideas. I just don't know if she can see the fatal point of the dragon soul pill. In the room, Yin Nuashing tidied up a little. She did not immediately start refining again. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the ground and used her hands to take the 120 herbs. She looked at them one by one. This time, she even opened her evil spirit eye and wanted to see through the herbs. Then what is the essence of these herbs? Only when they are fused together and neutralized can the elixir be formed. Yin Nuashing twirled a vine in her hand. The essence in her colorful eyes became even more intense. This pile of herbs is on the strong side. This pile is on the soft side. This pile is on the negative side. This pile is on the positive side. And this pile is on the neutral side. When she looked at the herbs, Yin Nuashing subconsciously categorized them. Then she took the last herb. It was a leaf, also known as the dragon soul leaf. It was one of the main ingredients of the dragon soul pill. Although it was a dragon soul, it was actually a herb nurtured by dragon blood. In the entire herb, only that leaf contained the dragon soul. This leaf was also the life of that herb. Once it was taken away, that herb would quickly wither and die. Dragon soul leaf. Yin Nuashing muttered. That strand of dragon soul was in the process of refining. If it was not handled properly, it would backfire on the alchemist. However, he had a soul contract with Foam, and Little Bing Air. One was one of the 4 divine beasts, and the other was the dragon clan's holy dragon, the dragon clan's king. This allowed him to have their weak aura. This dragon soul was easy to handle and would not hinder him. Let's try again. Sighing, Yin Nuashing concentrated and once again threw the herbs into the cauldron. Relying on his outstanding soul force and the might of the purple night dark flame, he quickly finished refining the herbs. Pausing for a moment, Yin Nuashing hesitated for a moment, then nodded. His evil spirit eye suddenly began to operate. Array after array appeared in front of his eyes, surrounding the cauldron 360 degrees without any blind spots. Only then did he nod his head. Then, he carefully controlled the purple night dark flame. Under the terrifying might of the divine flame, the essences of the various herbs were slowly fused together. Celestial cloud grass, 3-feather leaf, wind ring fruit, no problem. Poria root, green jade lotus, 5 flower buds, no problem either. Looking at the fusion of the various medicinal herbs, Yin Nuashing slightly relaxed for a second. Then he focused again. More than 10 formations frantically turned images into information and fed them back to him, allowing him to have complete insight into what was happening inside. He could even see the smallest details of the fusion of the medicinal herbs clearly. Dragon soul leaf. When the dragon soul leaf turned into a green-white liquid and slowly touched the colorful liquid, Yin Nuashing suddenly frowned. The arrays suddenly expanded and split apart. Shortly after, his face abruptly changed. A dazzling light suddenly burst out from within. That dazzling light was transmitted to his mind through dozens of arrays, almost blinding his eyes. Promptly closing his eyes, the barrier of the divine radiance mirror suddenly expanded. Yin Nuashing dryly howled as he covered his blinded eyes. Then rumble. Another earth-shattering explosion shook the entire hall. Yi Lin and the other two's teacups were shaken and the tea spilled all over the table. The 3 of them looked at each other in dismay, then looked at Yin Nuashing's room. They couldn't help but sigh. This girl should be fine, right? After the aftermath of the explosion, Yin Nuashing waited until his eyes weren't so painful before opening his eyes. He smiled bitterly as he rubbed his eyes. That brightness just now had almost blinded him. However, he also saw a problem. When the dragon soul leaf was fused into the medicinal ball, the strand of dragon soul that was originally suppressed suddenly revived and swallowed the entire medicinal ball in one gulp. As a result, the dragon soul leaf that was supposed to be fused into the medicinal ball became the dragon soul leaf that swallowed the medicinal liquid. The latter's medicinal liquid was also resisting with all its might, which was the reason for his failure. Yin Nuashing frowned and looked at the prescription again. This time, he finally noticed a line of words. He couldn't help but read. Only when the liquid is condensed and then fused can the pill be stabilized. I seem to understand. This time, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but laugh. Soon after, he waved his hand. Not long after, he began the last refinement. However, this time, he threw the dragon soul leaf into a corner of the cauldron and used his flame and spiritual strength to crazily compress it. Seeing him make a move, Lao Bai and the other two smiled knowingly. Lao Bai couldn't help but laugh out loud. It seems like this girl understands the problem. I didn't expect that I would be able to use the array to see the problem in the end. So what if this old man admires you? Yi Lin stroked his beard and laughed heartily. He looked as if he was happier than if he had advanced. He quickly finished refining all the medicinal ingredients and fused them together. However, this time, the dragon soul leaf was like a spectator. It spun at the side and didn't have any intention of fusing with it. Yin Nuoxing also stared intently. If his idea was wrong, then it wouldn't be fun. This test would probably be over. Condense. Yin Nuoxing changed his hand seal and shouted softly. The large ball of colorful liquid began to be compressed by his spiritual strength and flame, speeding up their fusion. The flame surged, and the light purple flame illuminated Yin Nuoxing's trembling hands and beautiful face. A drop of sweat slid down from his forehead, went past his cheek, and fell to his chin. His colorful eyes stared intently, and at this moment, he opened his evil spirit eye to its limit. He observed everything that was happening in the medicine cauldron without missing a single detail. It's now, after a short moment, when the fist-sized ball of medicinal liquid was compressed until only half its size was left, Yin Nuoxing shouted inwardly. His hand seal suddenly changed, and he used his spiritual strength to control the large ball of medicinal liquid to collide with the green and white ball of medicinal liquid. This time, nothing special happened. The wisp of white soul energy didn't move again. It seemed as if it was unwilling, but it also didn't resist. Instead, it watched indifferently as it was engulfed by the large ball of medicinal liquid. Then it fused with it. Seeing that the dragon soul leaf had finally fused with it, Yin Nuoxing sat on the ground and gasped for breath. This was really exhausting. His divine-level soul couldn't keep up with the consumption. Yin Nuoxing relaxed a little and gasped for breath for a while. Then, he focused his mind on the medicine cauldron, and the flame became vigorous again. Chapter 768. In the quiet hall, Yi Lin, Lao Bai, and the other two rested on their chairs with their eyes closed as they waited quietly. They did not count how much time had passed, but they felt that at least half a day had passed. At this moment, no one had walked out of the room. The quiet atmosphere was suddenly broken by Yi Lin's sneeze. Lao Bai and the immortal great alchemist also slowly opened their eyes and glanced at Yi Lin. This made him feel a little embarrassed, and he coughed lightly. Yi Lin yawned and said lazily, "Looks like there are quite a few good seedlings. It's been half a day, and they still haven't come out." Lao Bai's old palm rubbed the armrest as he softly said, 10 of them will be stuck at the elite grade, 7 at the low grade, 2 at the elite grade, and 1 at the elite grade. The remaining 5 should be 2 at the quasi-immortal grade, 1 at the intermediate grade, and 2 at the elite grade. Everyone is doing their best. At this moment, no one has the ability to split their attention to do other things. Everyone is fully focused, Yi Lin said. Then, he glanced at the room and could not help but chuckle. Senior White couldn't help but shake his head when he saw Yi Lin secretly laughing about something. However, he didn't say anything else. He sighed softly and glanced at the empty hall before closing his eyes once more and quietly waiting for time to pass. After a long while, when the 3 of them opened their eyes again, a door suddenly trembled slightly. The 3 of them turned their gazes over and stared intently at the door. Soon after, they saw a young man gently push open the door. His delicate and handsome face was somewhat pale, and his long hair was messy. He seemed to be in a somewhat sorry state. Seeing the young man walk out, Yi Lin and the other 2 nodded slightly. Then Yi Lin said, "Elite grade, congratulations on becoming a member of the Yuanding City. You can go to the cultivation room outside to rest. After you are done, someone will give you the badges." The handsome young man held his chest and coughed twice. Then he respectfully clasped his hands at the three people. Then he staggered towards the black door. Just as he pushed it open, someone went up to greet him and brought him out. After the young man walked out, another door opened and another young man walked out. His face was as calm as water and his eyes were somewhat gloomy. After the young man walked out, he closed the door behind him. Then he glanced at Yi Lin and the other two and walked out without saying a word. I say, great demon, don't tell me you don't intend to get the badge this time? Seeing the gloomy young man directly walk out, Yi Lin couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. The young man, known as the Great Demon, stopped in his tracks. He turned around to look at the trio and gently shook his head. What's the point if I don't return to the peak? Hearing this, Yi Lin smiled bitterly. Back then, your soul was damaged and almost crippled. It's good that you're still alive. However, you'll have to start cultivating your soul again. You know how difficult it is when you try to break through to the High Saint grade. Now that you've recovered to the Immortal grade, you'll have to take it one step at a time. The Great Demon sighed and shook his head. Turning around, he pushed open the black door and walked out without saying a word. This old man is as stubborn as ever. Yi Lin rolled his eyes. White also nodded helplessly. Sometime after the Great Demon came out, the doors to the rooms opened one by one. Figures flashed out one after another and finally stood in the hall. Although they were very tired, they still persevered and straightened their backs. They respectfully cupped their hands towards Yi Lin and the other two. Yi Lin repeated what he said just now. These people staggered out of the hall. At this moment, they were so tired that they wanted to find a bed to sleep on. Naturally, they didn't want to stay any longer. After these people came out, a few more doors opened. Then, a few people walked out dejectedly. They even swayed a little as they walked. It seemed that they didn't reach the level they expected and were somewhat dispirited. After sending off the last group of people, Yi Lin and the other two looked at the last two doors and frowned. Why aren't the two of them coming out? Creak. When they looked over, the two doors opened at almost the same time. Then, Yin Nuoxing and Xian walked out slowly. Yin Nuoxing even stretched his back. Unlike the two groups of people who left earlier, Yin Nuoxing and Xian didn't look pale at all. Instead, they looked very energetic. Those who didn't know better would think that they were just sleeping. They're all gone? Seeing that the hall was empty, Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in shock. Then, he instantly threw this question to the back of his mind. He looked at Xian and smiled. Xian also smiled sweetly. Little star, what do you think? It's okay. I risked my life and forcefully passed the high-level Immortal grade exam. After that, I tried 2 more times and consciously gave up. Yin Nuoxing smiled. He almost risked his life to pass the high-level Immortal grade exam, and he even had some luck. However, he stubbornly tried the Divine grade alchemy, and the result was that he would only be wasting materials if he continued refining. He, compared to a 14-year-old high-level Immortal grade alchemist, little girl, you've broken a new record. While the two of them were talking, Yi Lin and the other two slowly stood up from their seats and walked to Yin Nuoxing and Xian. Yi Lin said with a smile. Seeing the three of them walking over, Yin Nuoxing also smiled. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, Master, you must be joking. We were just lucky. In terms of experience, we're still far from them. Hearing Yin Nuoxing's words, Yi Lin and the other two narrowed their eyes. He was so talented at such a young age, but he wasn't arrogant. Instead, he was humble and humble. He was a talent that could be molded. My name is Yi Lin. This is by Ming and Mu Yang. The three of us are the elders of the Sacred Fire Guild in charge of the examination. Yi Lin said with a smile. May I know who your master is? Xian also cupped her hands. Mei Mao looked at the three of them slightly and blinked. Then, she glanced at Yin Nuoxing and laughed in her heart. They weren't really apprenticed, especially her. Yin Nuoxing blinked and thought for a while. However, he shook his head and said, We don't know what his actual name is. We only know that he always carries a saber on his back. That day, he passed by and gave us some advice. Xian couldn't help but laugh in her heart. Yin Nuoxing threw the blame to the Soul Saber Great Emperor and didn't admit that he was her master. A saber? Yi Lin and the other two were stunned and looked at each other. Then, a look of horror flashed across their eyes. They seemed to have thought of something. Looking at their shocked expressions, Yin Nuoxing and Xian couldn't help but be surprised. They didn't expect the Soul Saber Great Emperor's characteristics to be so obvious. They could recognize him just by saying that he carried a saber and was an alchemist. Just as Yin Nuoxing thought, Yi Lin and the other two indeed instantly thought of the Soul Saber Great Emperor. This was because he was extremely well-versed in the field of alchemists. His name was deeply engraved in the hearts of many alchemists, and he was almost a legend. Even though he guessed that they might be talking about him, Yi Lin didn't ask in detail. Today, when he saw Yin Nuoxing and Bai Ming's shaky alchemy techniques, he felt that what they said was true. Perhaps the master felt that these two little girls were quite talented and gave them some advice when he passed by. "Excuse me." Seeing the three looking at her, Yin Nuoxing called out weakly. Only then did the three look at her. Then, they heard Yin Nuoxing say, "Can we receive our badges?" Hearing this, Yi Lin smiled and nodded. "Of course there's no problem. Wait a moment. I'll get someone to deliver it to you." Given their status, they were top-notch even in Yuan Ding City. Even Dazzling Fire Palace and Morning Pill Sacred Hall wouldn't ignore them. Usually, when they walked outside, anyone who saw them would respectfully greet them. However, the talent and current achievements displayed by the two girls in front of them made them not dare to neglect them. In particular, when they heard that the master behind them might be that person, they became extremely solemn. Their future achievements would definitely be much higher than theirs. Not long after he finished speaking, the black door was pushed open again. Two women walked in respectfully, carefully holding a set of purple gold clothes in their hands. They respectfully handed it to Yin Nuoxing and Yin Nuoxing, and on top of the clothes, there was a high-grade immortal grade badge. This is the clothing of high-grade alchemists in Yuan Ding City. It's also a symbol of status. Of course, it's not made of ordinary cloth. After wearing it, it can help you maintain a clear state of mind while refining pills. It can also increase the success rate of refining pills, Yi Lin said with a smile. Yin Nuoxing curiously looked at the purple gold robe. It was cool and soft to the touch, just like the touch he felt when he held Xian and Foam Er's little hands. Taking the badge, Yin Nuoxing glanced at it and found that the scarlet flames in the background had turned golden. A large immortal character was engraved on it, and 3 stars arranged in an inverted triangle were extremely bright. Yin Nuoxing secretly glanced at Xian's badge. Then he was stunned and opened his mouth in astonishment. Xian, who was beside him, saw him stiffen and poked his face in amusement. Then, she waved the badge at her hand and looked at Yin Nuoxing's badge. She smiled and said, "Mine is not worse than little stars." Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had risked his life to pass the high-grade immortal grade assessment. He didn't expect Xian to pass as well. Moreover, her conditions were obviously not as good as his. If Xian had the same conditions, she would probably beat him. Little girl, you didn't expect this, right? You're not the best. The high-grade immortal grade pill she refined in the end was even better than the one you refined. Lao Bai couldn't help laughing when he saw Yin Nuoxing's astonished expression. Yin Nuoxing's smile became even more bitter. His god-ranked soul and divine flames couldn't compare to this girl who had nothing. He knew that Xian's 5 elements power was very powerful, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. Xian couldn't help but smile when she saw his gloomy appearance. She stretched out her hand and gently poked his face, slightly easing his gloomy mood. Yin Nuoxing's mood was slightly complicated and his face was gloomy. He had so many advantages, but he still couldn't compare to Xian, whose conditions weren't as good as his. But at the same time, he was happy and gratified. Naturally, he was happy to see Xian's talent in alchemy. The purple gold robes have a lot of authority in the Origin Cauldron City. They can even get preferential treatment when using the teleportation gate. We won't talk about more. You can experience it for yourself, Yi Lin said with a smile. As for roping them in, they had thought about it, but they didn't have a reason to say it. Not to mention that there might be that person behind Yin Nuoxing and the others. Just based on their current grades, their status wouldn't be lower than theirs. Although Yilin felt a little regretful that they didn't have a reason to rope them in, he couldn't help but feel a little proud when he thought about how the youngest high-grade immortal-grade alchemist was from their Sacred Fire Guild. Yin Nuoxing casually put away his robes and badge. He didn't intend to change into them now. He then cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Seniors, I have something to ask." "Oh, feel free to speak." Yilin nodded with a smile. Seeing Yin Nuoxing's humble appearance, he liked him even more in his heart. Yin Nuoxing pursed his lips and exchanged a glance with Xian. He then fixed his gaze on the trio and said softly, "To be honest, we came from the Origin Cauldron City because we heard that someone here had a piece of mixed yuan iron essence. That's why we came here. We also felt that it would be a little troublesome if we didn't have an identity in the Origin Cauldron City." Mixed yuan iron essence? Yi Lin and the others widened their eyes in astonishment. They then exchanged glances with each other and smiled bitterly. Why did he mention this? Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in confusion when he saw the trio's reaction. Chapter 769. Why did you suddenly bring this up? Yilin's expression was a bit unnatural as he looked at Yin Nuoxing bitterly. Yin Nuoxing didn't know why their expressions suddenly changed. She rubbed her palms in confusion and pondered for a while before saying, "Actually, my other master is an advanced blacksmith. He wanted to move his body after a long period of silence. So he asked us to come out and find mixed yuan iron essence and starstones." Hearing this, Yi Lin and the other two nodded in understanding. Mixed yuan iron essence is a unique treasure in the blacksmith's domain that is comparable to a godly material. We don't have such a godly item, but we do know someone who has a piece. I estimate that it's about this big. As Yi Lin spoke, he opened his hands. The area was about the size of a wash basin, which stunned Yin Nuoxing. Her pretty face immediately lit up with joy. "Really? I wonder if Grandmaster, you could take me there. If we can obtain mixed yuan iron essence, we definitely won't forget about Grandmaster Ye's benefits." Yi Lin and Bai Ming laughed bitterly when they heard this, and then they waved their hands to indicate Chun-Shi to calm down before they said, "Don't get too excited too early. Due to certain reasons, we are indeed able to recommend you to him, but it's not convenient for us to speak too much on your behalf. After all, we owe him a favor." Yin Nuoxing nodded. Yi Lin then continued, "So if you want to exchange for mixed yuan iron essence from him, you have to heat up your wallet." After he finished speaking, Bai Ming also nodded and said, "I'll take these two children. You two go deal with the people waiting outside." After Bai Ming finished speaking, he nodded at Yin Nuoxing and Bai Ming, then took the lead and walked out the door. When Yin Nuoxing and Bai Ming saw this, they quickly followed. They were already thinking about what they should use to exchange for the mixed yuan iron essence. Since the other party was acquainted with Elder Bai, it could be said that he was also an alchemist. Of course, it could also be said that he wasn't. However, if he was an alchemist, what grade of materials or medicinal pills would he have to throw out in order to make the other party release the mixed yuan iron essence? After they walked out of the black door, Feng Er, Yi Shi, and the others who were waiting outside quickly stood up. When they saw the two of them walk out, they smiled in their hearts, but they didn't ask anything because Bai Ming was still beside them. Moreover, looking at his solemn expression, it wasn't appropriate for them to say anything. Bai Ming led Yin Nuoxing and the others to the gate of the Sacred Fire Guild, but he was not in a hurry to go out. He found a room and asked Yin Nuoxing and Xian to change into the purple gold robes. The two did not dawdle and went into the room. After a while, they changed into the purple gold alchemist robes. Both of them were tall and slender. Yin Nuoxing was also slender and didn't look very muscular. Now that they had changed into the tight-fitting purple and gold robes, their bodies looked even more elongated. Xian was also curiously fiddling with the luxurious robes. Bai Ming smiled softly and nodded his head as he looked at the Yin Nuo star duo, whose ethereal aura had become even more prominent after they had put on the alchemist robes. These two girls were really quite talented. After changing their clothes, Yin Nuoxing and the others followed Bai Ming all the way out of the Sacred Fire Guild and walked straight along the main road. On the main road, some passers-by saw Bai Ming and Yin Nuoxing and the others behind him, and a hint of surprise flashed across their faces. Then, they immediately put on a respectful expression and made a small path on the main road. The originally crowded street also became smooth in an instant. Seeing this scene, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smack her lips. Many people were envious when they saw the purple gold robes on his body. This was also a symbol that represented that he was a high-level alchemist. It was just that he didn't realize this. While walking, Yin Nuoxing also told Yin Nuoxing and the others about the assessment and the current situation. When they heard that his alchemy talent seemed to be inferior to Xian's, the three of them couldn't help but laugh. This made Yin Nuoxing's pretty face turn a little red. She couldn't help but mutter, "Anyway, I'm a magic array master. I'll let this girl be in charge of alchemy and whatnot." That's right. Bai Ming also told Yin Nuoxing and the others about the person they were going to meet. That person's name was Big Demon, but it was just a title. As for his name, they never knew. They just called him Big Demon. He was originally a mid-level saint alchemist, but he failed to break through to the high level. When he was at his weakest, his enemy somehow found out. In the end, his soul exploded and he was almost crippled. Fortunately, he was still alive. However, because his soul was half crippled, he could only cultivate again. Now, he was only at the mid-level of the immortal grade. When we met back then, Bai Ming, Mu Yang, and I all owed him a favor. However, he's a little eccentric. After the accident, he refused to accept our help and didn't like to be disturbed. Therefore, he tried his best to finish the matter in a few words, said Bai Ming. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing smiled. After pondering for a while, she murmured, his soul was damaged and he had to cultivate again. If you have any medicinal pills or heavenly treasures that can directly repair the soul, he might not even hesitate to exchange with you. Even if he can only recover one grade, it's the same. Bai Ming nodded with a smile. After pondering for a while, Yin Nuoxing gently stroked the 2 rings on her left hand and nodded solemnly. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing seemed to have a plan, Bai Ming's heart trembled. Could this little girl really have something that can restore the soul? That's right. He has an advanced alchemist and an advanced blacksmith behind him. Since he asked his students to search for items, he should be prepared. Bai Ming also understood when he thought about the advanced blacksmith that Yin Nuoxing had mentioned. After walking for some time, they had unknowingly left the bustling areas and arrived at a small mountain range within Genesis Cauldron City. There were no huge buildings or palaces within a radius of 4 to 5 miles. It was as if they had arrived at the outskirts of the city. After walking around the forest path for a few minutes, a small hut made of neatly built wood suddenly appeared in front of them. Bai Ming led them to the hut and patted the dust off his robes. The environment here is not bad. Yin Nuoxing looked at the wooden hut and scanned the surroundings. He smiled in his heart. It was indeed a good place to live in seclusion. Bai Ming patted the dust off his robes and took a light breath. He raised his hand and patted the door. As soon as his palm touched the wooden door, it opened with a clang. Then a gloomy voice sounded from inside the hut. "Come in." Hearing this somewhat gloomy voice, Yin Nuoxing also slightly imagined the appearance of the person inside. Very quickly, the appearance of a strange old man appeared, causing his face to tremble. Bai Ming waved his hand and walked into the hut. Yin Nuoxing and the others hurriedly followed behind. The quiet wooden hut was simple and tidy. There was nothing special in it. In the hall on the right, they saw a young man with his hands on the windowsill. He was looking out the window, but they didn't know where he was looking. Seeing that the young man's appearance was completely different from the eccentric old man he had imagined, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He thought that this was just a disciple or son of a great demon. Then, he saw the young man turn around. His handsome face was slightly gloomy. His eyes were hollow, and his gaze was sinister. When he saw Yin Nuoxing and Yin Nuoxing, who were wearing purple and gold robes, his eyebrows unconsciously twitched. Then, he said indifferently, "You guys are just there for the assessment." Hearing this voice, Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He took a light breath and took a step forward. He cupped his hands at the great demon and said respectfully, "Junior Yu Exine greets Senior Great Demon." "Yes, speak frankly." The great demon was a little surprised to see that Yi Shiwen's actions were smooth, and there was no unfamiliarity or reluctance. He even had a respectful expression on his face. When he saw that Xian also cupped his hands at Yi Shiwen, he was even more surprised. His tone also became slightly gentler. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing tilted his head slightly and glanced at Bai Ming. The latter also carefully gave him a look, indicating that he could only help him up to this point. This caused Yun Nuoxing to helplessly nod his head. After a few rounds in his stomach, Yun Nuoxing finally smiled slightly and said, "I heard that the Great Demon Senior is a straightforward person and hates beating around the bush. Therefore, I will get straight to the point. If I have offended you in any way, I hope that the Great Demon Senior can guarantee me." Hearing this, the Great Demon nodded and motioned for him to continue. Yun Nuoxing then continued, "I heard that Senior Great Demon has a piece of mixed Yuan iron essence and would like to exchange it with Senior." Just as Yun Nuoxing's voice faded, the big demon's eyes immediately narrowed. The air also abruptly froze, causing Yun Nuoxing and Ziyan's breathing to become sluggish. When they raised their heads, they saw that the big demon's expression seemed to have become even more gloomy. "Ahem," Bai Ming coughed. He didn't expect such a big reaction. But thinking about it, the great demon treated this piece of iron essence as a life-saving straw. He couldn't use it, but he hoped to exchange it for something that could help him recover his soul. Thinking of this, Bai Ming glanced at Yun Nuoxing and sighed in his heart. He hoped that she was really prepared. "This old fellow told you, right?" The great demon put his hands together lightly, then turned around and looked out the window. After pondering for a while, he said, "Since old Bai brought you here, he should have told you about my situation. Then I'll make it clear. This mixed Yuan iron essence is my last hope. If you have something that can recover my soul, even if it's only 30%, I'll give it to you." Of course, the great demon knew very well that he wasn't a blacksmith. It was useless to keep a piece of metal for forging. The best choice was to exchange it. His wish was to rush to the level that he had never reached before. Therefore, he needed to recover his half-damaged soul first. These two girls didn't look very old, but they were able to wear the purple and gold robes that represented honor. Obviously, they had some tricks up their sleeves. This gave the great demon some hope. Although this hope was unrealistic, he held on to it tightly. He couldn't be bothered with the fact that the pills that could recover the soul were of high quality. He just held on to this glimmer of hope. Hearing this answer, Yun Nuoxing wasn't surprised. He really did have a way to recover the soul. Moreover, the grade of the pill wasn't just high. It was a low-quality pill. Just looking at it made his chest hurt. However, the mixed Yuan iron essence is indeed worth such a pill. If you really want to exchange it, I should be able to take advantage of you. After pondering for a while, Yun Nuoxing raised her head and looked at the great demon's gloomy face with a hint of hope. She smiled and said, "I do have a pill to recover the soul." Hearing this, Bai Ming's aged face was filled with surprise. The great demon's heart also violently jumped. Before he could speak, Yun Nuoxing smiled mysteriously and said, "I can see that the great demon's body and soul don't seem to fit perfectly. This shouldn't have been obtained through possession. It's more like a reconstructed body. Although this flaw will become smaller as the soul becomes stronger, it will always be there." These words caused the great demon's hand to tremble slightly. He looked at Yun Nuoxing with a strange gaze and frowned. Although he didn't know how Yun Nuoxing had seen through it, it was just as she had said. The great demon knew that his soul wasn't very compatible with the reconstructed body. However, he had no other choice. He could only think of a way in the future. He never thought that this 14-year-old girl would see through it. Even Bai Ming hadn't noticed this. Yun Nuoxing smiled when he saw the change in Lin Dong's expression. He twirled the ring with his finger and tapped it gently. Soon after, a jade bottle popped out and was held in his hand. He gently opened the bottle cap, and a terrifying fluctuation slowly spread out, causing the space to ripple like water. Bai Ming and the great demon were no strangers to this powerful fluctuation. It was the spiritual strength that they were most familiar with. In an instant, their eyes widened. Seeing their great reactions, Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, "I think it shouldn't be a problem to exchange this for the great demon's mixed yuan iron essence and the method to reconstruct the soul, right?" Chapter 770. In Yin Nuoxing's spiritual world, Ziyi, who was bored, was flipping through the nearly 10,000 books in Yin Nuoxing's spiritual world. When she heard this, her hands trembled. She straightened her body and looked at Lan Xner, who was sitting beside her. Kaixia also turned her head. Mei Mao, who was as bright as the sun, was looking at her with a smile. Lan Xner's heart trembled when she heard this. Of course, they knew why she had said this. When they first met, Yin Nuoxing had said that she wanted to let Lan Xner run in the divine world again. She wanted her to feel the gentle breeze and the hot sun. She wanted her to go to the East Sea and experience the world. However, even Ziyi had never heard a method to reconstruct the body from the soul. Yin Nuo planet did not find such a thing in the treasure trove left behind by Xianin. Perhaps there was something behind the restriction, but there was nothing in the place where it appeared now. That's good, Xner. After dozens of eras, you can have a body again. Are you happy? Ziyi smiled and poked her smooth forehead. Hearing this, Lan Xner also smiled, but after a while, her face became slightly gloomy, and her smile gradually disappeared. Ziyi and Kaixia were also stunned. They looked at each other and seemed to understand something, but they didn't say anything. As for Whitey, it was lying on the flaming lotus throne. It raised its head and looked at them. It opened its mouth and yawned. Then, it closed its eyes and turned around to go back to sleep. A terrifying spiritual wave came out of the white jade bottle, causing the ordinary wooden house to tremble slightly. Although the spiritual wave was vast and terrifying, the great demon and Bai Ming opened their eyes wide. If they could get the elixir in the jade bottle, the great demon might be able to recover. The elixir that Yin Nuoxing took out was not the inferior grade elixir that he had estimated. It was a middle grade elixir, which could heal the injuries on the soul and eliminate all the drawbacks of the soul. As for the injuries, it was not an ordinary injury to the soul. Otherwise, this superior grade elixir would be child's play. The great demon stared at the jade bottle, and the light in his eyes became brighter. Although he could not recognize what kind of elixir it was, he knew that if he could consume it and refine it, he might be able to recover to the superior grade immortal level, or even the middle grade divine level. Phew! The great demon heaved a sigh of relief and gradually calmed down. He looked at Yin Nuoxing with a complicated expression. He did not expect that he could take out such an elixir. The grade of the elixir should be the legendary grade. After pondering for a long time, the great demon tilted his head and exchanged glances with Bai Ming. Both of them could see the shock in each other's eyes. The great demon also let out a dry cough. His gaze continued to stare at the jade bottle in Yin Nuoxing's hand. Although his gloomy face was still gloomy, there was an additional trace of gentleness. He smiled and said, "What grade of medicinal pill is this?" "Master gave it to me. It's a middle grade ice spirit essence elixir. It's used to heal injuries to the soul. Although it can heal external injuries, it's not as effective as healing one's soul." Yin Nuoxing smiled. He kept calling Great Demon his master, but he had pushed all the blame to the Soul Saber Great Emperor. He wondered what the Soul Saber Great Emperor would think if he knew about it. It's a famous divine medicine, even among the extreme great elixirs. Every time it's concocted, it will consume a large amount of spirit essence. It's extremely harmful to the soul. Not many divine emperor alchemists are willing to concoct it. The great demon and Bai Ming's expression changed. They were astonished and seemed to understand something. Their words made Yin Nuoxing's expression change slightly. He clenched his fist and thought of Xianin again. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Senior Great Demon, what do you think? Is this ice spirit essence elixir comparable to the mixed yuan iron essence elixir, the method to reconstruct the body? Yin Nuoxing asked with a smile. The Great Demon pondered for a while. The Great Demon pondered for a moment, and a pondering expression flashed across his face. He hesitated for a moment and looked at Bai Ming. After seeing him quietly nod his head, he had some plans in his heart. Originally, if Yin Nuo Planet only wanted the mixed yuan iron essence, he would not hesitate to exchange it. However, if it involved the secret method of his soul reconstruction, he would hesitate. After hesitating for a while, the Great Demon sighed and rubbed his head. He said, "Little girl, let me tell you in advance. Back then, my soul was almost destroyed by my enemy. Do you know why?" Yin Nuoxing was a little happy when she heard the Great Demon's words. However, she was a little stunned after hearing his words. She then shook her head. How would she know why the Great Demon's soul was destroyed? However, just as she shook her head, she was stunned. Yin Nuoxing hesitated for a while and probed. Could it be because of the secret technique to reconstruct the body? Bai Ming also looked at the Great Demon curiously. He didn't know about this matter. The Great Demon nodded fiercely and said, "I obtained this secret technique by accident. If I'm not wrong, it should be passed down from a great power in the Divine Prefecture. As for which power it is, I'm not sure. I didn't stay in the Divine Prefecture for long. This secret technique seems to be a secret technique that great power doesn't pass down. If they discover that an outsider is practicing it, they will definitely send someone to retrieve it." The fastest way to retrieve it is naturally. When the Great Demon said this, he waved his hand in front of him, causing the air to turn slightly cold. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Indeed, when a person died, they would disappear like smoke. Not allowing others to know about it was indeed the best way. The Great Demon suddenly shook his head with a smile and said, "But I'm thinking too much. You have such a powerful master behind you. Even the 9 divine halls have to treat you with respect. How would those people dare to care about you?" When he said this, he even laughed self-deprecatingly. Then, the Great Demon gently touched the token on his waist. There was a flash of light, and an extremely thick, silver-black metal lump the size of a wash basin appeared before him. Upon closer inspection, the metal lump was full of bumps and bumps. Its surface was also uneven. Under the sunlight, there was a ray of silver light flowing through it. After a while, the Great Demon sighed and took out another page. He placed it gently on the surface of the metal lump and said softly, "This is the secret technique to repair the soul. This secret technique is incomplete. However, the cultivation method can be ignored because this page contains the entire method to reconstruct the body. At first, there will be some inconsistencies. However, as you cultivate or use some medicine to make up for it, this flaw will be erased." Yin Nuoxing stared at the silver-black metal lump that was slowly spinning in front of her. The light that was emitted from it was somewhat dazzling. She could even vaguely feel the metal elements in her body heating up. Yin Nuoxing gently exhaled, a smile hanging on his face. Under the Great Demon's grinning gaze, Yin Nuoxing gently held the page in his hand. The ice-cold sensation caused Yin Nuoxing's smile to grow even wider. He carefully inspected the remnant page. After confirming that there was no mistake, he finally smiled in satisfaction. He did not expect that he would be able to obtain such an additional reward on this trip. "I can finally help Xener reconstruct her body." Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. The promise that she had made for many years could finally be fulfilled. Senior Great Demon, this Ice Spirit Divine Essence Pill is yours." After putting the 2 items into the pendant solemnly, Yin Nuoxing smiled and took the jade bottle that was hanging by the side. Then, she respectfully handed it to the Great Demon. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, the Great Demon excitedly stretched out his hands and received the jade bottle with trembling hands. Then, he took a deep breath and waved at Yin Nuoxing and the rest. Then, he looked at Bai Ming and said, "Old Bai, protect me. I will now. Great demon, you should recuperate first. This matter cannot be rushed. Hearing this, Bai Ming also nodded with a bitter smile. Yin Nuoxing and the rest looked at each other. Then, they cupped their hands, the two of them. Knowing how excited the great demon was, they did not stay any longer. They laughed happily in their hearts and quietly walked out of the wooden house. When Bai Ming saw this, he turned around and reminded the great demon. Then, he chased after them and wanted to send Yin Nuoxing off. Yin Nuoxing. Before Yin Nuoxing and the rest left, they stopped when they heard the voice behind them. When they saw Bai Ming walking in front of them, they smiled and cupped their hands together. Thank you, Senior Bai. If there is anything we can help with in the future, we will definitely lend a hand. Hearing this, Bai Ming waved his hand and smiled. This time, we have resolved a knot in the great demon's heart. Instead, we owe you a favor. However, even though he said this, he was still quite happy. After knowing about Yin Nuoxing and the rest talent in alchemy, he wanted to befriend them. As for roping them in, he did not dare to think about it. After chatting for a while, Bai Ming said, I will stay behind to protect the great demon. I will not send you off. Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded. Wish Senior Great Demon good luck for me. I will. Bai Ming nodded. As if thinking of something, he said, Oh right, you mentioned the Star Stone before, right? Hearing this sentence before turning around, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Then, she nodded and said hopefully, Senior Bai, do you have a clue? Hee, I naturally don't have such a divine object. However, I know where it might appear. Bai Ming smiled and shook his head. Then he stretched out his withered hand and pointed to the east of Yuan Cauldron City. In the east of Yuan Cauldron City, there is a very large silver-white platform. You will see it when you go there. Occasionally, a Tao origin meeting for alchemists will be held there. To put it bluntly, it is a group of alchemists who will discuss alchemy and exchange their experiences in alchemy. Any alchemist above the supreme grade can participate. However, even if the Tao origin meeting is not held, there will still be people there all day long. Alchemists who have encountered bottlenecks in their cultivation will go there. Those who have encountered problems in alchemy will also go there to discuss with others. Occasionally, there will also be people who will exchange alchemy recipes. It is one of the most important places in Yuan Cauldron City. Bai Ming smiled as he stroked his 1-foot-long beard and said, I'm protecting the great demon. You can tell Yilin and Mu Yang about this. They can also bring you there. Okay, thank you, Senior Bai. Yin Nuoxing smiled and cupped his hands. He had never heard of this so-called Tao origin meeting. Although they were qualified to participate, it would save them a lot of trouble if they had an experienced guide. As for the white platform that Bai Ming had mentioned, he had seen it before. On the day he had arrived, he had overlooked the entire Yuan Cauldron City from 1,000 miles away. It was a huge white platform that occupied nearly a quarter of the entire Yuan Cauldron City. After informing Bai Ming, Yin Nuoxing left with Xian and the other girls, rapidly flying towards the Sacred Fire Guild. In a short while, they had returned to the guild. After a brief search, he found Yilin and Mu Yang and explained the matter to them in detail. Bring you to the Pill Origin platform? No problem, but I have some bad news to inform you. The Tao Origin meeting was held not long ago and will not be held again in the near future. Yilin nodded after hearing Yin Nuoxing's words. However, the information in his words made Yin Nuoxing smile bitterly. They had come at the wrong time. Upon seeing the bitterness on his face, Mu Yang helplessly scratched his beard as he consoled. However, even though the Tao Origin meeting will not be held, the liveliness there will not decrease by much. There will still be many alchemists there. Moreover, from what I know, the one you are looking for will also appear there. Mu Yang smiled. Chapter 771. Origin Cauldron City was a city where almost all of its members were alchemists. In this city where alchemy was the norm, even life would be closer to alchemy. The Pill Origin platform was a place that was born out of this, occupying nearly a quarter of the area of Origin Cauldron City. The pill origin platform was tens of thousands of feet tall and was divided into 4 levels. Not everyone was qualified to step onto the platform, requiring a certain level of strength. From the bottom to the top, they were divided into elite, top, immortal, and saint. However, if one had a background in Origin Cauldron City, such as Dazzling Flame Palace, Morning Pill Sacred Hall, or Sacred Fire Guild, then even an immortal alchemist could reach the top level. If the younger generation of elite and top-tier alchemists from these 3 forces wanted to go up, they would need to be led by the seniors of their respective forces. In other cases, no matter what background one had, those who trespassed without reaching the required grade would be surrounded and chased away by the guards of each level. In the worst case, they would even be banned from entering the pill origin platform. At this time, on the pill origin platform, other than the top floor, there were many people on the other 3 platforms. Some people were holding rare or even rare herbs in their hands, discussing with other alchemists what these herbs were, what kind of medicine they could refine, and how to mix them. Others took out a bottle of pills and let people identify the pills just by smelling the pill fragrance. There were also some people who gathered in 2s and 3s to discuss their own alchemy skills or sit down to set up a stall. So big, it looks much bigger than it looks from the sky. At the bottom of the pill origin platform, 6 or 7 people walked out from the street. When they arrived at the bottom, they looked up at the huge silver-white platform that was even taller than the city walls. The colorful-haired girl immediately exclaimed. Every inch of the alchemy origin platform was engraved with mysterious patterns, like the totems of birds and beasts. The entire alchemy origin platform was densely engraved with these patterns, making it look extremely mysterious. Let's go up first. Yilin saw his surprised expression and felt a little satisfied. The pill origin platform was the largest and most special area in Origin Cauldron City. Who knew how much effort was put into its construction? To be able to receive the praise of an outsider made them feel that the construction was very worthwhile. Yin Nuashing nodded. After thinking for a while, she exchanged glances with Xian, took out her alchemist badge, and hung it on her chest. She then tidied her purple and gold robe before looking at Yilin. Yilin chuckled when he saw their solemn expressions. He waved his hand and led them up the stairs. On both sides of the platform steps, there were 2 fully armed guards. Their auras quietly spread out. These guards were actually divine experts. Their eagle-like eyes constantly scanned the people who were ascending the platform. Their focus was the badge on everyone's badge on their chest. If there was nothing important, they wouldn't take action. If there was nothing important, they wouldn't. Their eyes were on the badges S. When Yin Nuashing and the others approached, the 2 guards paid special attention to them. However, when they saw Yilin, the 2 guards with solemn expressions cupped their hands towards him. When they saw the badges on Yin Nuashing and the others' chests, they also bowed towards them. According to the rules of the pill origin platform, alchemists of the immortal grade and above could bring their companions in. Therefore, they didn't stop Feng Air and the others and allowed them to follow Yin Nuashing and Yilin up the white platform. After walking up the platform, the quiet atmosphere was instantly thrown away. Noisy and boisterous voices suddenly rushed towards their faces and drilled into their ears. The pill origin platform has a formation that blocks out the sounds inside and outside. The alchemists of Origin Cauldron City will come here to discuss the Tao when they have nothing to do. Yilin smiled and pointed at a place where a group of people were gathered. Yin Nuashing turned his gaze and looked in the direction that Yilin was pointing at. Then he saw a group of people talking loudly and passionately about something. Their words were like swords, and the atmosphere was even more hostile. Why does it seem like 2 groups of people are quarreling? The people gathered in a group were even gesticulating and pointing at each other from time to time. Their faces were filled with disdain, and they were arguing until their faces were red. It seemed more like they were quarreling. Don't underestimate the Tao of alchemy. Many alchemists have their doubts solved through this debate and exchange their knowledge of alchemy. Who knows, they might be able to derive new alchemy recipes. Yilin laughed and said, "You can go and observe. Who knows, you might be able to gain some insights." With your grades, no one will dare to provoke you. Yilin pointed at his chest. Yin Nuoxing suddenly understood. They were currently on the premium platform. With two immortal-grade alchemists standing here, it would be very easy for them to attract attention. I'll go take a look at the immortal-grade platform and ask about that person. If you're tired of watching, come up and we'll meet up there. Yilin said, then turned around and walked up the platform. Okay. Yin Nuoxing and Yilin nodded. Then they looked at Yi and the others and smiled. They looked left and right, then fixed their eyes on a group of people who were gathered at the side and talking peacefully about something. They slowly walked over. When Yin Nuoxing and the others just walked over, a young-looking person walked forward. He took out an item from his spatial storage device and spread it out on his hand, attracting many people's attention. At first glance, it was a red tree branch that was 1 foot long. The bark on its surface was curled up, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the branch was not bark at all. Instead, it was flower petals that were only the size of a pinky nail. They were extremely hard, and even if one were to touch them, the petals would not change. These small flowers were densely packed throughout the entire branch. When one looked at it from afar, it looked like curled tree bark. I saw this medicinal herb in the forest. There aren't many demonic beasts there. When I picked it, there was nothing special. The surrounding weeds grew 1 foot tall and blocked it. The young man raised the medicinal herb so that everyone could see it more clearly. He said, "Does anyone recognize this medicinal herb?" As soon as he said that, everyone curiously stretched their necks to take a closer look. However, many people frowned and shook their heads. They could not recognize what medicinal herb it was. Another person took out a thick book and flipped through it. In the end, he could not find it even after a long time. He could only sigh gloomily. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before, but I can't remember where. This branch is shaped like a fiery rock, and it grows deep in the mountains where no one disturbs it. Could be a rock vine? One person stepped forward, touched his chin, and said hesitantly, "Rock vine." When everyone heard this, they looked at him curiously and pondered. Rock vine grows in hard rocks and jumps out from the cracks of the rocks. It has the effect of tempering the body and breaking the bones. If it is refined into a pill, it can increase the strength of the body and make the body as hard as a rock. The person continued, "No, there is a record in the Medicine Immortals canon. The rock vine stands at the peak of a mountain. It is not frozen even after enduring wind and snow all year round. It uses rocks and snow as its source of life. It hibernates for 1,000 years before breaking out from the rocks." As soon as the person finished speaking, a slightly chubby young man shook his head. He said reasonably and said, "Just now, this brother said that the weeds grew 1 foot long. It is obviously a place of eternal spring. It can't be a rock vine." When the person heard this, his cheeks trembled. He looked at the fatty with some displeasure and said, "Then tell me, if this is not a rock vine, what medicinal herb is it?" "This." The fatty laughed embarrassedly. He scratched his fat face and said, "I don't know." Tisich, listen to your nonsense. This is a rock vine. If it is not, then tell me what medicinal herb it is. The young man who said it was a rock vine rolled his eyes and pointed at the fatty. He said angrily. The fatty also snorted and crossed his arms. "Although I don't know what medicinal herb it is, I have the Medicine Immortals canon as evidence. I can prove that this is not a rock vine. If you're not convinced, I can take it out now. But you insist that this is a rock vine. What evidence do you have? Could it be that you were just guessing?" "Nonsense. There should be a limit to your nonsense." "Bullshit." As the two people refused to accept each other, the young man even rolled up his sleeves and grabbed the fatty's collar. The fatty was not to be outdone. He grabbed the former's wrist and argued with him until his face and ears turned red. When the people beside them heard the words of the two people, they also held their own opinions. Only the young man holding the tree branch stood in the same place in a daze. Seeing that this group of people could not be reasoned with, they started a fight. It did not seem like they were here to discuss the Tao. It seemed like they were here to fight. Uffed. When Ziyin and Yin Nuoxing saw this, they could not help but burst into laughter. When the surrounding people heard this, they also turned their heads around in shock. When they saw the few little girls gathered together and laughing, their eyes also brightened. The young man who was holding a tree branch could not help but take a few more glances. After which, he coughed dryly and said, "Ladies, I don't know what you are laughing about. This is a very serious topic. Don't randomly disturb us." Hearing this, Yin Nuashing and Xian also slowly stopped laughing. After a dry cough, Yin Nuashing said, "Well, actually I know what this is." "Huh." When a young man heard this, he suddenly put down the fatty who was fighting with him and shouted, "You know, is a rock vine, right?" "Bah, miss, don't listen to his nonsense. This is definitely not a rock vine. I dare to swear on the medicine of mortals canon." The fatty also replied, not to be outdone. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight again, Yin Nuashing was a little embarrassed. She shook her head and said, "This is indeed not a rock vine. This is a rock flower branch. It is very similar to a rock vine. When the two are placed together, it is very difficult to distinguish them. The medicinal properties are very mild. Snow-concealing grass, dragon gall fruit, and the rock flower branch can be used to refine a low-level Saint grade body tempering pill." Yin Nuashing smiled. "Rock flower branch? Low-level Saint grade?" Everyone was stunned. The young man who said it was a rock vine was also stunned. He frowned and was about to refute when he saw the badges on Yin Nuashing and Xian's chests and their purple gold robes. He immediately widened his eyes and said, "You're a deity-grade alchemist." Hearing his exclamation, everyone also looked at the two people from Yin Nuashing in shock. Their eyes were slightly dull. Just now, they were so focused on arguing that they didn't notice the clothes of the two people. Then, they were a little curious. They didn't know why these two immortal-level masters came to this premium platform. Since the deity-grade alchemist said it was a rock flower branch, it should be right. Yes, it should be a rock flower branch. After seeing their grades, everyone accepted the answer immediately. Yin Nuashing shook her head helplessly. Then, she looked at the young man who was holding the rock flower branch excitedly and said with a smile, "Let me say something. The rock flower branch has been extinct since ancient times. Therefore, although the one in your hand might not be the last one, I guess it should be close to it." Hearing Yin Nuashing's words, many people's expressions changed slightly. Then, they looked at the young man enviously. The young man also looked at the fiery red branch in his hand in confusion. This was an extinct medicinal herb. No wonder no one could recognize it. Seeing everyone's gaze, Yin Nuashing shook her head with a smile. She took Xian's hand and looked at Feng, and the others. Then, she said with a smile, "Let's go up." The girls also smiled and nodded. Then, they followed Yin Nuashing up the stairs. Along the way, they also looked at the elixir grades in other places. In one place, an old man took out a vague prescription and invited everyone present to complete it together. However, in the end, he did not get what he wanted. There was also a group of people who directly set up their cauldrons to refine elixirs on the spot. They competed in alchemy skills on the spot. As for the winner, it was a young man whose grade was lower than the others. This really shocked everyone present for a while. Yin Nuashing and the others observed for a while and felt that there was nothing special. Then, they walked to the third level, the deity grade platform. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.